Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 33 of the Clown Fiesta podcast. I'm Blue Jay. JNT250 is the other man joining me, as always. And we are ready for playoffs now, or I guess the mid-season showdown, as people are calling it. To me, I don't know about you, JNT. I look at it as playoffs, but hey, whatever you want to call it, I think we all know what it is. Quick note, some of you may notice that we are starting, so people that are watching the live show may notice that we are starting at a different time this week. This is just to coincide with the new Hotline League start time. For those that don't know, Hotline League moved their show an hour earlier, and well, JNT and I, obviously, we like that show, and we like to tune in ourselves and call in sometimes. So we figured we would adapt, and we're going to move till after their show. And for now, this is going to be the new norm. We'll have to wait and see, and if we like or dislike this. But for now, it will be 12:15 a.m. So technically Tuesday morning, mainly Monday night for East Coasters, and 9:15 p.m. PST for West Coasters. So nothing else should change as far as I know at the moment. Just for now, the live show will start at different times, and we're sorry for those that it's an inconvenience for, but yeah, it made the most sense for us, so this is the way we're going to go about it. JT, any initial thoughts before we get into topics? Well, okay, actually, what do you think about the mid-season showdown? Is it that, or is it playoffs?
They just gave it a fancy name. It's still playoffs. They had to give it a new name to sort of commit to this whole it's all one season. But there's still a spring split and a summer split, and they just had to give it this fancy name because they gave the summer playoffs a fancy name. So I don't know. Rebranding that exactly.
Yeah, I'm with you right there. To me, it's playoffs. Anyways, the first topic for today is, well, Regi is back in the news, if you want to call it. What is this, fourth week in a row?
You can honestly say every single week there's some controversial thing that Regi is talking about each and every week. It's just whether we choose to bring it up.
He's not absolutely wrong in this. I just think he's a little bit... well, anyways, I'll let you fill in the people as to what exactly went down, and then we can discuss what happened. So give our listeners, give a little spiel of what happened for our listeners.
Yeah, well, basically, as the tweets on screen say, but I'll read it out. But Nicole, the CEO of Evil Geniuses, tweeted out saying, last owners meeting, Reginald complimented 100 Thieves as the only non-shitty new LCS team. So on behalf of all the shitty new LCS teams, suck it, GG will play all. And I think that happened after EG beat TSM on Friday's match pretty convincingly. It was kind of it wasn't even a close game, really.
Yeah, it was a pretty clean game out of EG, which we can't really say that often this year. But anyways, continue.
And then Regi swiftly responded with, I said all esports teams, to be fair, not just LCS. 100 Thieves has accomplished more business success in 1 year than most have in 10, including EG. Winning a best of 1 doesn't change the fact that EG is underwhelming compared to 100 Thieves. All hail at Ron Jobinson. I have no clue who that is, by the way.
That's the head of I don't know his exact title, head of esports or whatever. I think it's the bald guy that works for 100 Thieves. I think that's him.
Okay,
I'm pretty sure it's him. Anyways.
I know who
I
know who you're talking about. And then he said woohoo at the end.
Yeah.
Basically, in summary, Regi called all the new LCS teams bad except for 100 Thieves, and Nicole was pissed about that.
Yeah, I just think so here's the thing. If you're Regi, you're probably a little disappointed about what the other orgs in the LCS are doing because you're trying to help grow the league, right? And TSM obviously is a huge part in why the league is successful, if it is successful. So it's easy for him to just look at all the other orgs and be like, you guys ain't doing shit, which is kind of true. That's why I say he's sort of right, because I will say I'm pretty underwhelmed by what some of the orgs do. There's some orgs that can't even barely run a YouTube channel. They don't make any content, even they can't really do much of anything, or they don't bring much to the league. And so that's where I think his frustrations would come up in their meetings that they're having. Now, why you need to reply to Nicole's thing? She's obviously just trying to have some fun banter. And I think he gets a little this doesn't seem like banter from Regi's side of things to me anyway. I don't know about you. Do you think this is banter, or do you think it's a little BM?
This is banter. In my opinion, this reply is 100% warranted from Regi because Nicole is calling him out. I don't know. I have no problem with Regi going, replying with this. However, it's not like the best time, just considering that you've been in the spotlight for the last, what it feels like, 3 weeks because of various other topics around the LCS. I think if you were to take that away and just look at this, like just put a magnifying glass under this, like this is totally warranting. Like it's banter between them, and like you just said yourself, like he's not exactly wrong in this. I would have to honestly agree with his statement that 100 Thieves is the true only successful in terms of LCS. Like we're just talking LCS here, but 100 Thieves is really the only new successful LCS org. We're seeing a ton of, orgs come and go in the time of franchising. Like just off the top of my head, we started franchising with Echo Fox, Optic, Clutch, and that was it. They had those 3 teams. They're all gone. Am I missing any teams? We had those 3 teams that are now gone. We have Dignitas who've rejoined the league, Evil Geniuses who have rejoined the league, and a lot of these new teams that we were seeing, they're not that good. Their performances aren't that good. Their social medias aren't very good, and it kind of just seems like with all these new orgs, if you're not winning on the in the league and on the Rift, like your org is kind of just losing. And 100 Thieves have been the only team to sort of find some success outside of the league because they've made such an effort to be prevalent in, signing popular streamers, focusing heavily on their streetwear, which is, really popping off and everything. So,
and focusing on a lot of different games as well, I would say. But I do want to counter to you because I still think FlyQuest is a success. Just because they're still new and they're still very small does not mean they're not doing the right things to go in the right direction. Clearly, they were a winning team last year. They don't have the cash to keep that kind of roster because it was a bunch of, really high cost players. That's fine. They still do a lot with trying to make new content, trying to have their own kind of brand and their own maybe not style, but their own, I can't think of the word, but you know what I'm trying to say. They are unique. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and
they're not just the same old, like if they did what Immortals do and they signed some development roster players, they usually don't really do well. They don't really like identity. Yes, thank you. Thank you, Ren, in the live chat. Identity is the word I was looking for. They have their own identity. And I think that they're doing a lot of unique things, such as their Spanish stream, their freaking tree quest, C quest, B quest, all that crap. I mean, I know it's still really good stuff. And I think that they've actually done a good job at, one, finding their identity, but 2, being a team that is worthy of respect. Whereas I don't have much respect for teams like Immortals or like, I don't know, even EG, I think has fallen off. So like I said before, I think Reggie's a little bit right.
Yeah, I mean, when I was talking about 100 Thieves and them being the only successful org, that doesn't mean I necessarily think that all the other teams or all the other organizations are failing. I would definitely agree with you that FlyQuest, they have their own unique identity, and they're starting to build their community and brand. It's been done, like they've been in the league since Season 7 now, but it really does feel like since Season 10 with the introduction of their new CEO, I forget her name, her Twitter @ is like Megzumi Bears or like something.
Oh yeah,
Trisha maybe.
Yes, it is.
Okay, she's done a really good job since she came in Season 10, and like we just mentioned, started the whole tree quest, C quest, B quest. I think it's a really good, like what they're doing, very good for the league, and draws a lot of attention from potentially anybody who isn't just like your average League of Legends fan. But in terms of the rest of the teams, like you just mentioned, like they are pretty underwhelming. Like that's where I do think Regi is like pretty spot on. Like we have orgs like Golden Guardians, Immortals, and Evil Geniuses, who for the most part are very underwhelming. The only reason why EG is like even, in like the part of like contention is because their team does well. So far, Immortals, formerly Optic, hasn't done well. Jesus Christ, we know how badly Golden Guardians has done, opposed from their one, Season 10 summer, run. But it's pretty difficult because a lot of your success in the LCS is linked to your performances.
Yes, it is. And I would also say that even though Golden Guardians are in a terrible spot right now, I would still say that I've seen a solid effort out of them as well to do some cool things and try to make some cool content. Like it seems like they put some time into the content they make. Could they make a little bit more? Probably, but it also comes with a pretty significant cost considering they're not making a bunch of money. And we also know how much this org is having issues with money at the moment. So I give them a little bit of leeway as well, because I don't think they're all that bad. The real bad ones to me are, well, I would have said Dig before this split, but now they're starting to have some success and they're starting to meme the NA thing. But definitely Immortals and CLG, who have like, CLG still has fans that, like, I don't think they really cater all that well to fans.
I
I've
totally
been
forgot about
following.
CLG.
Yeah, like, the thing is, they've been around for a long time. This isn't like a, you're new to the league and you're just trying to find your footing. Like, let's freaking go, CLG. You should be able to do this to make some pretty cool content by now. And I would also say, like, I follow, or I sub to them on YouTube just to see like what kind of content they're putting out. I think CLG needs to make a League of Legends YouTube channel, because like I don't care that CLG Red is making a Valorant team. Like, I don't care about that if I'm a CLG League of Legends fan. I think that that's something that might hold you back from wanting to sub to them on YouTube, but that's a whole nother thing altogether. But anyways, yeah, I think that there's just some orgs that don't do that much. And the last thing I'll say is that I do think that another thing someone pointed out in the live chat is about the Live Evil thing that we saw last year. And I completely agree that I don't think Evil Geniuses have done much of anything, whereas like I thought they were going to. And I think one of the issues with like Evil Geniuses is that they're supposed to be this evil team, right?
Well,
But it seems like
the
they're
funny
run by a lot
thing,
of really nice people.
the
And
funny
like, it
thing
doesn't fit.
was when they like made their first announcement to the return, like they're returning to the LCS, and there was that whole like video when they, yeah, like you said, they were trying to like act evil, and like it was like a, I don't know, it was like a dark setting for like their thing to come back, and then it just turned into a meme. Like Sven Skaren would literally just like reply to like anybody and everyone on Twitter with just hashtag live evil, and it was just, it
But
just
he
turned
would
into a
hard
meme.
carry their
Oh no,
social game though.
it was good, but like it was just
Yeah.
funny how like their whole branding of being the evil team just turned into a meme, and like you just said, like it's kind of a bit forgotten already in season 11.
Yeah, it fell off super hard because your player that was hard carrying your social game isn't really doing it anymore. And by the way, the onus is not on him to do that.
Yeah,
His job is
like
to play the freaking game. But yeah, anyways, I think we've said enough about that.
hashtag live evil.
Yeah, I don't blame Nicole for tweeting "suck it," and I guess I don't really know how to feel about Reggie's thing, because
Yeah,
I think he's right. But
I think it's
me
fair
personally,
game.
I don't think I would have tweeted it back. I think that he was the one that started it, and she just replied because she was called a shitty org. But I mean, if you're gonna talk, you need to be a good org, and I
Yeah,
think Reggie's kind of right there. The
I think
org is
it's
kind
fair
of
game from Reggie,
crap.
and it's kind of like in his
Yeah.
DNA to reply with these kinds of things. I'm all
Yeah,
for it. It creates a little more like imagine like
that is true.
like
That
just
is true.
picture this. We have we'll get to this later. TSM loses their best of 5 series, faces Evil Geniuses the week after. Like
Oh
you got a
yeah,
banger like storyline
let's
right there.
go, baby.
Like
Yeah, no, it's a good point.
One last thing I'll say is like trash talk is what makes sports fun. Like Double F's whole moniker back in the day was like everyone else is trash, and like it created a lot of like fun storylines between him and any like NA players, or when he called Reckless bad, like way back in season 4 or 5 or whatever. Like it's exciting when two people are flaming each other and then they have to go prove it.
Yeah, yeah, no, it's true. It's a good point. I actually completely agree.
Alrighty, the main
Let's
topic.
get into the main topic.
What's on the menu, Blue Jay?
What is on the menu this week is we're going to do a little recap of the whole spring split for each team. And what I mean by that is we're going to say whether we think that each team had a successful or not successful spring split to this point in the year. Well, point in the year, I don't know why I said that. But anyways, you get what I'm trying to say. So I don't care what order we go in, J and T. We talk about this every week. Where do you want to go?
We'll
do you
start
want to
at
go
the top this time because we normally start at the bottom.
So was C9's spring split a success in your eyes? Go.
See, like this is the part where if I'm writing this on a piece of paper, you circle the box that says NA, because like it's you can't really answer the question yet. You know, from what we saw at the lock-in tournament, it was kind of figured that Cloud9 was going to be one of the teams in the finals just due to their performances and how well they were playing. I think they got off to a really hot start at the start of spring split and sort of cooled down towards the end. Luckily, they had some okay games in their final week moving into playoffs, which I feel like gave people a reason to like calm down on Cloud9 after losing to CLG on Friday. But what I would say with Cloud9 is, you know, you can't really know. Like, if they were to just like at this point, if they were just to completely bomb out of playoffs, it's obviously a failure because this went from the perceived one of the top 2 teams in the LCS a favorite to go to MSI to represent North America. And if they were to just bomb out in playoffs, it would obviously be a huge failure. But on the flip side, if they go off, win the split, and rep NA at MSI, like it's a success. I think worst case scenario for Cloud9 for it being a success is them making finals. And even at that point, like I guarantee you, every player on the team will feel like the season was not a success if they don't win the split.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. The one thing that I will say is, so I agree with you that their playoffs will definitely determine whether spring was a success or not. But I will also say that for me right now, yes, it's a success because they've won the split. I think you are seeing improvements in the top lane, although I think we're going to need to see more if they want to be a real contender at Worlds, say. I think they're going to need to see more out of your boy Fudge in the top lane. But for now, I think things are trending generally in the right direction. I think Perks had a really rough start, right? And I think he's starting to look a lot better. Mind you, I do think he's getting caught out too often, and he's probably got a shit ton of isolated deaths. I don't know how many, but I'm sure he's got a lot. So there's some things that like the team needs to clean up. But overall, they won the split. They took the first seed and they get to choose their opponent in the next round. So for now, yes. If they lose a series and they get knocked out pretty early, then absolutely not a success. But I think it's fair to say for now that, yeah, I think it's a success now. We'll see how that changes, if it changes.
Okay. Yeah. Just one thing before we move on. You were talking about Fudge and how he's been improving. I think we did see Fudge's best, at least, laning performance of the year in their game against Dignitas, where he was playing the Renekton into the Scion, which a lot of people actually believe is an even matchup, which Scion then outscales late game. But we really saw Fudge, assert some dominance in that lane, going up like 50 CS. I think like 12 minutes into the game, it was like 110 to 64 CS at some point into the game. I think Fudge had a really great game on Saturday. It's good to see that Cloud9 feels more comfortable actually putting some resources into Fudge. I wasn't a huge fan of him just like being thrown on Gragas for like almost, it felt like 3 weeks in a row, and just being like put in this spot where, hey, you're picking a tank utility top. We're not going to see you the whole game. Come join us at 20 minutes for team fights. I definitely like it when teams are able to play multiple styles, and with Renekton and other carry top laners like your Jason to your Gnar, any Camille's or Jax's or whatever, like it's good to be able to put resources into any player on your team and win through that player.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. That like the Renekton Scion game. That's a lane you should win, and he did. So it's not like, oh, super extra, bonus points for you, but it's like a couple bonus points. It's like good because I haven't really seen him win too many lanes, if any. I don't really remember. But yeah, that if you're supposed to win a lane, you win the lane, and that's what he did. So yeah, I agree with you that is worth noting because that's the improvement that you want to see. Because I don't think we would have seen it in January.
Alrighty, we got TSM up next. And for me, I would say that TSM split was was a success already, regardless of playoff performance, in my opinion. Mainly because of just how bad they looked in the lock-in tournament. Yep. Everyone remembers their lock-in tournament for Sword Art absolutely griefing games and Hooney's Gnar performances, and him like basically whenever TSM locked in Gnar, Hooney would basically start the game 0-2, 0-3. And a lot of people were worried actually for TSM going into the spring split because they had, Hooney, who didn't seem up to snuff with the rest of the just general LCS players. He was losing to a lot of, weak laners. Sword Art was supposed to be this big import $6 million support player that came in and was literally running it down in games and making like really terrible engages. TSM looked so like uncoordinated. There were questions of if they were going to sub in like Concert in the top lane or Cody Sun in the bot lane. And it's sort of, TSM, they did their classic. They look a bit rocky in the first 2 weeks, and then they just did their steady increase in terms of looking like a strong team going into playoffs, and a team that should be feared going into playoffs because they have looked very good. They went 1-1 against Cloud9 in the regular season. They went 2-0 against Team Liquid in the regular season. And when you're able to you go 3-1 against the top two teams in the league, that's a very good thing going into playoffs.
Yeah, I completely agree. I'm not sold yet on. It's not that I'm not sold. It's that there's definitely areas that I think they need to improve, like the early game. We've talked about this before, but the early game is still a little bit shaky. But I completely agree that their spring is a success because they were such a question mark coming into the year, even before lock-in, honestly. I want to say a lot of people had them fourth. I feel like most people had TLC9 and 100 Thieves ahead of them. Now I can't speak for everyone, but I'm sure a fair amount of people had them fourth in their power rankings. And yeah, I think Hooney wasn't supposed to be so great. He was supposed to be a big question mark as well, and I think he's looked a lot better. And so yeah, I agree that they are already a success. I will say though that if they do lose both of their series, then I would swap to the no, it's not a success. Um, or maybe not that it's unsuccessful, but that it's kind of in the middle.
Fair
Because I
enough.
don't think losing 2 playoff series is like I don't think that's what makes a successful team for a team like TSM. You know what I mean? That spends quite a bit of money and has some pretty good players on their squad. So I would say definitely a success, but I don't hold them to the same level that I would Cloud9.
Fair enough. I would say, while I kind of agree on the sense that, like, yeah, maybe if they bomb out in playoffs as well, you could consider it a meh. But at the
Yeah,
same
like
time, like, I
let's say
think,
hold on, I want to ask you if they
okay,
go 0-3-0-3, then how do you feel
yeah,
about
yeah,
it?
okay. If they go 0-3-0-3, like, well, it depends though, because like 0-3s can be close 0-3s. Like,
That's
if they,
true.
if they, if it's a fucking shit show, TSM in playoffs, then I would say meh, and then they'd be a question mark again going into Summer Split. But like, to be honest, I would have Team Liquid favored in this upcoming best of 5. They lost to Team Liquid and they lost to like EG, like 3-2. Like, I don't know, like, it's not that bad considering how
Yeah.
bad they were in lock-in. Oh, yeah, that's a W right there.
Yeah, no, I agree. They're a team that's trending in the right direction. Sword Art was looking like a big mistake, right? Like,
Oh yeah,
oh man, did that look like an expensive mistake that they made? Um, but then they started having like a lot of pressure in lane, and it allowed Sword Art to start roaming, and he was actually able to impact Hooney's lane quite a fair bit. I think a lot of the success. Now, I don't want to give all the success that Hooney has had to Sword Art, of course not. But I think a lot of the success that Hooney has had has been from his support, and I know that's been the one of the latest memes. I think that's a Cadril meme that support diff is everything diff. Um,
true.
but it is
Big
somewhat
agree.
true at the moment. You're seeing a lot of supports impact other lanes just by roaming at the moment. So, yeah, a lot of props to Sword Art because I think he's looked a lot better, and that was something that was quite worrisome at the start of. Well, I was going to say at the start of the lock-in, but at the start of the lock-in and at the start of spring, because I want to say the first 2 weeks TSM was not looking too good.
Yep. All right, we got
Next up, TL, right?
yeah, Team Liquid up next. For me, I'm kind of in the same Cloud9 boat here. Uh, this is a team that won the lock-in tournament, and going into the season, were probably the favorites on, you know, I would say they probably edged out Cloud9 in terms of the majority of people who thought that like Team Liquid was the favorite.
It was pretty close,
Yeah,
right?
it was definitely close. It was probably like
Yeah.
if I were to guess, it'd be
I
anywhere
think you
between
had
like,
C9, I had TL, right? At the start
maybe,
of the year?
but I would say it was like a 55-45 or a 60-40 split between who you thought
Gotcha.
between Team Liquid and Cloud9 was the best team in the LCS. And similar to Cloud9, I feel like the minimum for this team is making finals. And even then, if they were to lose finals to Cloud9 or even any other team, the players themselves would feel like it's a disappointment
Yeah.
because of who they are, the team they're playing for, and their just overall goals that they have for the season.
Yeah, and when teams spend as much as the C9 TSMTLs spend, you want to go to MSI, right? Like
Yeah.
you want that practice even if you don't spend that much for that matter. You definitely want that MSI experience. Like the Cloud9 of 2020 mentioned so many times how they really wish they could have gone to MSI and how valuable that practice would have been running against these other top teams around the world. And so yeah, I think TL is no different from them. I think you're completely right. If TL does not win finals, I think they are also going to categorize it as a failure. Um, yeah, I don't think there's anything different with that. As far as how their spring split has gone, like so far, I would say it's a little bit of an unsuccessful spring split. Um, Mostly because of tactical. I know that's a little harsh to throw it all on his shoulders, but let's be honest, who is weighing this team down the most? It's tactical. And that
Yeah.
doesn't mean that Santorin, Jensen, Alphari, and Core JJ haven't been without their own mistakes, because I would say at the start of the split, even Core JJ wasn't looking like himself, and Jensen as well, actually.
ALPHARI, no mistakes.
I mean, yeah, he actually made a few, but I would say that Jensen and Core were definitely worse than Alphari. Um, my point being, though, is that I think that TL should have a better record than they do have. I know they fixed their record a little bit going into the end of the year, and they finished in a good spot and whatnot. But yeah, there was a lot of games that really got away from them, or even games that they closed out that like were not clean games to close out. And so I think if you were to ask TL so far if they think their spring split was a success, I think they would say no, because I think they know that they can be better than they've played.
Yeah. Same boat as Cloud9. We got 100T up next. I would definitely classify this as an unsuccessful split from 100 Thieves, mainly because they just like looked straight up so much worse than they did in lock-in. The team was doing like a TSM does their steady incline moving to playoffs. 100 Thieves was kind of doing a steady decline this entire split. Yeah.
I wouldn't even call it steady. I'd call it a little steep, wouldn't you?
Maybe, but like, even though like they were like, I don't know, the first 2 weeks, this team was very, very good, and then the third week they kind of kept winning, but their games were like a bit shaky. And then week 4 happened, they went 1-2, they went 1-2 again, and then they did the sub, and Ryoma came in, looked okay. One of these performed all right, but I still think there are a ton of problems with this team, specifically with Someday and Closer. These two, in my opinion, have had like the biggest drop off of any player, any top player from summer 2020 to spring 2021. People expected Someday to be so much better this split because of the team that was built around him. Everyone was like, okay, the like Someday's got the fucking wheel, and he's like starting to drive this bus off a cliff or something, and Closer's like right there with him, like not stopping him, because man, Closer had a rough couple games this at the end of the year.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. The thing is, I wouldn't even just lay it at the feet of Closer and Someday. I think it's pretty much across the board outside of FBI, in my opinion. I think FBI is still the only player that is playing to the level that we expect from FBI. I think he's still been very good. I just think it's hard for him to shine when your teammates aren't.
I just meant it was those two because like DeMonte got kicked off the bus.
Yeah.
So,
well,
like,
the other thing is, do you think there's a chance that DeMonte gets some games? Let's say 100 Thieves
no.
goes 0-2. Let's say they go 0-2 against
maybe.
Cloud9, right?
Maybe. I don't know.
I could see it.
It's hard to say, but I would expect Ryoma to start the playoff series for 100 Thieves. Yes, we could see a DeMonte substitution in, but I think that Ryoma has played well enough to give him the starting spot for this first playoff series against C9.
I don't think they would make the change in the first place if they didn't consider, if they didn't consider that. I don't think they would make that swap if they didn't actually think, hey, like, we're going to make this guy our starter come playoff time. I don't think that you would, make that swap. So I think you're completely right. I think Ryoma will start. But again, I think if they go 0-2, there's a chance that they're like, all right, DeMonte, get in there and try to change something. This is your ultimate chance to prove yourself if you could save that kind of series. But yeah, I think it's a little bit of an when 2 weeks before playoffs, or the midseason showdown, as we're calling it, if you make a change to your roster right before then, that's kind of Monka-esque,
Yeah, but I mean, I think it was a warranted change. Like, I don't know. I thought the swap was...
Oh, yeah, it's definitely... I don't think the change is bad. I just think it's a bad sign if that's what you have to do.
Yeah.
I'm not saying the change is bad. I'm saying it's bad that you have to do that. And that's a big
Yes.
Should we talk a little bit about the remake controversy that there was?
Oh, yeah. Man, like, I was so bored when that happened.
So first of all, there was a huge break in between games.
I timed it out. There is 1 hour and 34 minutes break from when the previous game ended to when the remade draft started.
Yeah. Now, that's a really freaking long break, but I will say it's kind of out of their hands, right? Like there was a fire alarm that went off for Immortals, and they had to move. They had to go to another building and get all set up and whatnot. Now, the obvious question, or at least I think the obvious question, is why couldn't you just start the next game and shift the schedule? Would that have been the end of the world? Now, maybe there's some logistics and some things that's wrong with that logic. Like maybe there's some things that you just can't do. So, if we're not part of the broadcast or whatever, fine. Maybe there's a very good reason why they couldn't do that. But dude, it was long. But the main reason why I wanted to bring it up was 100 Thieves were pissed because not only was the game remade, the draft was also remade. And I guess that's part of the rule book, so that's what's in the rules. But I think they might have to reconsider the rules on that one, because I think like most people would agree that like there's not really a very good reason as to why you wouldn't just keep the same draft, especially since it was said, it got out on Twitter. Zix, the head coach for 100 Thieves, ended up saying like, yeah, we had a 1,000 gold lead at like 6 minutes or 7 minutes or something like that. Like the game
Yeah.
was going heavily in their favor. And they had the draft that they wanted, which I remember saying even before we found that out. I was like, if I'm 100 Thieves, I'm pissed because I'm really happy with the draft I got. That's something that I think that they'll have to consider looking at in the future, because that rule makes not a lot of sense to me.
Yeah. I can't really fault the rule until they change it.
Yeah, like I get if it's in the
Yeah.
rule book, you got to follow the rules.
But when
Now,
stuff like this does come up, it does definitely warrant a potential change or adjustment.
yeah, and I guess 100 Thieves were not happy that Immortals decided to take the remake, or the redraft rather. They were pretty vocal that they should have just gone and run the same draft. I don't know if I can blame Immortals for that. Um, it's easy for me to say like if I was Immortals coach, I wouldn't ask for a redraft because I'm all ethical or whatever.
Yeah.
But your job is to win, right? And if your job is to win and you think you have a better chance of winning if you redraft, then you take the redraft, right? And I don't think it's on them. I think it's on the league to fix their rules, and that's my piece on it anyway.
Yep. Okay. We got a Dignitas up next. A Dig and a Toss. Successful split, I would say. I think a lot of people had this team pegged as like a 7th to 8th place team,
Yeah.
and to finish the split, ending 5th place with a 10-8 record, in a position that nobody thought they'd be in, I would definitely say it's a success.
This is a no-brainer success, even if they go 0 for and 0 for. If they go 0 for 3,
Well, they're in losers.
well, I guess they're in the bottom bracket already.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if they just go 0-3, to me, it's still a success. They are actually 5th. For someone wondering in the live chat, they're 5th. Yeah.
Yeah.
So Dignitas getting 5th, being in the top half of teams, is absolutely a success. You and I talked a little bit about whether this team is a development roster. I think for sure they're a development roster. They even came out and called themselves a development roster. And I just want to note the differences, because some people might look at their roster and go, well, these are all guys that have played in the LCS before, therefore they are not development players. I would disagree with that, because I think the amount of time played from players like Fake God or Saligo or Neo like are so minimal that I would definitely still consider them a development roster. These are guys that are still new to the league and still have a lot of growth or potential growth to be had. So for me, this is one of the best success stories of a development roster the LCS has ever seen, in my opinion.
Yeah, for sure. It kind of like you get a little bit of those like old CLG vibes where like the sum of their parts is greater than the sum, and the team just works like really, really well together. The both of us, we thought that ALPHARI might potentially have a bit of a drop in performance due to him no longer being with Johnson and him having to grow up or raise like another rookie AD carry. But it seems like we're kind of like on Johnson 2.0 with Neo.
Other way around, I would even say. I would say Johnson fell off after losing Afro.
Oh, yeah, no. Yeah, well, I'm talking about Afro here, but yeah, like Neo's kind of like the Johnson 2.0, performing very, very well. I would definitely put the tandem of Afro and Neo in like at least top 4 bot lanes in the LCS.
Yeah. I have to agree. I think they've looked great. I think that there's so much in every single lane on this team. I think you're seeing more than you should expect out of them, and I think that's why they're just an automatic success, because they are an all NA team. They've got a little bit of memeage coming their way, which I mean we haven't seen a whole lot of that out of Dignitas. So we talked about earlier about like kind of crappy orgs just in esports altogether. I think this is something that works in their favor because it gives people a reason to cheer for this team. So there's some good on and off the rift in my opinion. So automatic success for me.
Yeah. They just basically they just have as much like room, like their ceiling will just increase dependent upon the results in playoffs. Like we both said, like even if they were to lose their first playoff series, still a success. And if they were to for whatever reason they do some like miracle playoff run, like it kind of just adds to the resume there.
Now, I believe if Cloud9 wins, I mean, that's what's expected to happen. Cloud9 is the favorite against 100 Thieves. Then Dignitas would play 100 Thieves.
They can win
I
that
think
series. Oh, yeah.
I think I would probably go Dig. I don't know. I don't know yet because I think that's a tough one. I think that we have a week to see what 100 Thieves looks like coming up, so we'll have a little bit more information. But they're in a decent spot to win a series, to win a playoff series. So yeah, I know I said that they're already a success, but they could be even more successful, honestly.
Yeah, all right. Our last playoff team, we got Evil Geniuses up last. This one, it's kind of hard to tell for me because I was really high on EG going into the season, just based off. I thought the roster was really, really solid. I thought Impact was like going to be a super underrated signing, and he seems to be like one of the biggest. Like again, I have to say this again. Just it's his name though. He's one of the biggest Impact signings of the offseason, just in terms of the value that he brings to EG. But
I
EG,
need to stop you right there.
no,
Hold on. Because not that you're wrong, but if it was me that said he had the biggest impact right now, you'd be shaking your head at me. I just need to call that out.
I've said this.
Proceed.
I've said this before, like that exact like statement. So that's why I just had to accept that I was going to say it again. Okay.
Go
Nonetheless, on the flip side, they had some players who were expected to still perform at a very like high level or at least solid level in Svenskeren and Ignar, who have kind of dropped off a little bit in my opinion. Svenskeren has turned into a little bit of an inter in the LCS in terms of like when I don't know, Svenskeren just makes some really questionable plays, and Ignar, he had a big kind of in the middle of the season had a point where he was really struggling a lot to find like solid engages. He didn't seem too comfortable on the rel. It seemed like a lot of his support champions that he was very successful on, like the Rakan, like the Blitzcrank, like the Thresh, has sort of fallen out of meta in favor of these super hard engaged champions like the Leona, the Alistar, the rel. But I think EG, they had a couple of good games this weekend, which gives me a little bit of confidence going to playoffs that this team is like not going to just crash and burn and go 0-3. I think they will put up a fight against whatever team they do play. But overall, I would say not a success, but again, like depending on their playoff performances, like that could increase. Like if they go out and whoop somebody in the first lower bracket matchup, then it'd be tough to say. I'm kind of between a unsuccessful and a meh.
Yeah, I'm on the. I think this is the opposite. Who was it before?
TSM.
That I said. Maybe it was TSM. Anyways, yeah, it's the opposite. It's like right now, definitely not a success. I think this team was supposed to be a lot better than they have been, and I think that they can save it, but you need to get a lot better than what we've seen. I think you're definitely right about Svenskeren. I think you're definitely right about Ignar. Although I will say I thought Ignar has started to look better a little bit better lately.
Yeah, no, I think in the last 2 weeks he played a lot better than he did in the middle 2 weeks.
Yeah.
His middle 2 weeks were bad.
Yeah.
Bad.
And I think about what EG looks like if Ignar starts to find the engages that we saw last year.
And Svenskeren,
I think this is a pretty lethal team because they're aggressive, but if you can follow up aggressively on plays that are successful, like that's the kind of team you want. And we talk all the time on this podcast about killer instinct. I think EG definitely has that in their lineup.
It does, that's for sure.
Absolutely. And I would even say Impact suddenly has that. And Peter Dunn has been very vocal about how he's been pushing for his team to play aggressive no matter what team he's coaching. But he also mentioned just a couple of hours ago on Hotline that he's even gotten Impact to play aggressive. And I've totally noticed it myself. Absolutely. So I really like what EG can do if Ignar starts to be that guy that we know him to be. And I think that you can't count this team out. But I will say that so far they have not had a successful spring. I think that 6th place is just not where this team should be. I think they should be fighting for that upper bracket spot. That's where I think they should be. I think they should be either 4 or 5, but not 6.
Yeah, I agree.
I also want to say, just before we move on, I also want to say there's a lot of people that don't give Shizuke a lot of credit just because he is coin flippy. And don't get me wrong, we've called him coin flippy ourselves. But I would still say that his coin flips are later in the game. I would say his laning phases are getting a lot of advantages for his team. He's very regularly has prio, and he's pressuring the other mid laner and getting CS leads for himself. So even though he's coin flippy, I don't think he's coin flippy on the early game. I think he's had very, very good early games that he's getting advantages for EG. They're just throwing them later. But that's my piece on Jizuke, anyways.
And then other times he's diving under tower.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sometimes.
Hopefully not during best of 5 playoff series.
Yeah.
All right, Immortals up next. Another developmental roster, but I would say this team has been a success so far. I think they are kind of smack dab in the middle in terms of like expectations. I think I had this team. I don't remember my exact rankings, but I had them either 7th or 8th. I'm pretty sure I had them 7th. No, maybe I had FlyQuest 7th. Nonetheless,
does it feel to you that their 7th is a lot better than what I would normally think for a 7th? Does it feel like that to you?
I don't know.
To me, their 7th place is like a good 7, if that makes any sense whatsoever.
Sure.
I know that's an oxymoron, but yeah, I think this team has looked better than I would have anticipated. So to me, I think it's a success.
Yeah, the thing that gave me hope for Immortals moving into Summer Split, because the rest of the teams that we're going to be talking about did not make playoffs, and they will be. They have a lot longer of an off season than the rest of the teams because they don't have to, prep for playoffs. They're kind of just prepping for next split. But what I like from Immortals is we kind of saw Xerxes, Destiny, and Raze sort of get a lot better the later that the split went. I think at the start of the split, we had, Revenge had his really like pop off week 1, and Insanity we kind of recognized was a strong laner. And then Revenge's performance started to dip, but then we saw Xerxes sort of come into his own and work really well with Insanity. And then in these last 2 weeks, we kind of saw Raze and Destiny have some like pop off moments. Raze has been like kind of the wild card of 80 carries. He's whipped out the Vayne, he's whipped out the Draven, kind of like likes to, he seems like the guy who wants to have a lot of resources put into him and be the carry, which I like. That it gives him a unique playstyle. We're not really seeing any team other than Immortals pick any like Draven or Vayne. I think Johnson played one Vayne game, if my memory serves me correct. But
it was an awful game to pick Vayne too. I don't remember what the matchup was exactly, but it wasn't just the matchup. It was the whole comp. I remember Doublelift went on a long rant about why Vayne was just not the pick that game. But anyways.
Yeah. I like what I saw from Immortals. I saw steady improvement throughout the split, which is good. It's, although Revenge has been underperforming, it's known that his ceiling can be high because we literally saw it in that first week. And that's what I like to see from these rosters that are built not to win right away, but to sort of find those diamonds in the rough. And
yeah,
I think they're doing a good job of that.
Well, and coming into the split, I'll admit I thought that he was a mid to low tier top laner in Academy, so I didn't expect much out of him. I thought that he would get I thought he would look a lot like Niles is looking, maybe not that bad, but to that extent a little bit. And I think he's been I don't think it's disrespectful. I think it's accurate. Yeah, no, I think he's been better than what I would have expected out of him. So I think there's a success there. Now, maybe my memory fails me, but I don't remember Xerxes struggling all that much towards the start of the year. I thought he actually looked good. I just remember, I do specifically remember BLABER outplaying him on the Lilia. But that's about it for me. I didn't think that he looked too bad. I thought that he's actually been consistently good throughout the split. And I think that if Xerxes was jungling for a better team, I think that he would be having a lot more success if he was playing for, I don't know, name any a good team. I think he would be looking a lot better. I just think that he does have a lot of young players on his roster. And even though they're looking okay, they're still not looking as good as other rosters. And so I don't think there's as much to do when you don't have lanes that are winning that consistently, especially with how bad their bot lane was. And like you mentioned, Revenge struggling a little bit in the top lane. So he's put in a difficult spot, right?
Yeah.
And then, yeah, I agree. Now, I don't think Insanity has been that great the last couple of weeks. Maybe you and I jinxed him. But overall, I still think he's had a great split as well. And we talk about development rosters and what a development roster should look like, or a development player, rather. And to me, I think Insanity's so far what a successful development roster should look like, or player, rather. Because I think that he is definitely better than what we saw in summer of last year. And he's on a steady incline. So, yeah, I think it's good for him, and I think the bot lane's looking better too.
Nice.
Success.
We got FlyQuest up next. I would categorize them as unsuccessful. Again,
Definitely unsuccessful.
if my memory serves me correct, I think I had them as 6th in my terms of my power ranking. So I had them as a playoff team. And this team was kind of getting like a lot of attention before the split started because everyone kind of thought that FlyQuest was going to be like this dark horse team that has like this super pop-off potential with, Licorice, superstar Latin America player Jose Diodo, and then these two rookies in Palafox and Diamond, who were supposed to be like the best of the best of the best in terms of academy. Diamond had been playing on Cloud9 Academy for like the last maybe 2 years it's been, and Palafox had been on other academy rosters, but had been on Cloud9's academy roster for the past year, and those players were involved in that whole Licorice deal. And then, forgot to mention Johnson. Johnson was a really beast 80 carry in summer 2020. I rated him as a top 4 80 carry in the season. And
Not no more.
Basically the way that this team goes, Diamond is an inter. He got subbed out. Johnson isn't playing very well. Like, yeah, sure, an 80 carry can play well, even though support's playing bad. But like Johnson's just playing bad, straight up.
Yep.
Palafox, I would categorize him right now a tiny bit coin flippy. We've seen some really pop off games from him, like one of his Yone games. He had a really pop off TF game against Dignitas this week. Had a great Silas game against TSM the previous week before. And then we see a ton of bad games from Palafox where he's like 0-5, 0-6, 1-4, 1-7, like. Ugh. And then there's like Licorice and Jose Diodo like trying to like paddle the boat for 5 people.
I would say that your last analogy there is more Jose Diodo trying to paddle, because I don't think Licorice has been that great either. I don't think he's
his
been
last
as
2
bad
weeks
as
have been really good. I thought his
I
last
don't
2
think
weeks
he's
were
been
good.
as bad as the bot lane or as Palafox, but I definitely don't see old Licorice anymore. Of course, it's easier to look good when you're on a good team, and you're gonna look worse when you're on a bad team. But I don't think that it's proportionate to like. I think that Licorice has fallen off a significant amount. Let's say significant amount that it's noteworthy. And I think that Jose Diodo is the only player on this roster that, to me, looks good on a semi-regular basis. So yeah, I think that this team's been just flat out bad. It's sad to see because of how good they were last year and they weren't able to retain their players. But hey, that's life. That's just the way it goes sometimes. I am interested to see what Dreams can bring to the lineup,
Yeah.
because I think that Diamond wasn't really bringing much of anything. If I'm being I'm being a little harsh, but I think I'm being accurate. I don't think Diamond was getting much of anything going, especially since what he was known for was his engaged supports. And he's played a lot of Rel and Alistair and Leona, let me tell you, and he's not making much happen with it.
When they subbed in Dreams, I was like, wait a minute, FlyQuest has Dreams on their academy roster? Because
Yeah,
from
I
what I
didn't know
remember,
either.
he was like a pretty solid support. Was on Schalke when they were doing that whole miracle run thing in the LEC where they started off 0-8 and almost went to Worlds. I didn't even know that they had him on their academy team. So when I first heard the news that like Diamond getting subbed out, Dreams getting subbed out, I was like, wait, like did they just like straight up import this guy like for like the last weekend of LCS? But no, they've had him on their academy roster. Definitely think will be a great addition. It'll be hard to say like, obviously FlyQuest will be practicing during the offseason. They'll make that decision whether they play Dreams or they play Diamond. But I think, if Diamond's not the answer, they have a suitable backup in Dreams.
Yeah, my guess that's my guess is that I think they're gonna roll with this guy. If I had to take a guess, I think that Dreams will probably be the starter going for the rest of the year. That's to be determined, of course. We've seen him play 1 week, right? There's not really enough info to go off of as of late. But yeah, I just think that Dreams will probably make that team better. I don't think he can make it much worse. And to your point before, Johnson has just been not
Bad.
what we saw before. There was, I want to say it was week 4. There was 1 week where I thought Johnson had a really good week, and I was like, oh, maybe we're gonna start to see what we saw last year. Not really. His team fighting is very questionable, and it's not what we
Oh
come to
man,
know of Johnson. How clutch was his team fighting last year?
his
It was so good,
Tristana
man.
against Dignitas on Saturday was terrible.
Yeah.
He really
It,
was bringing to life the Tristana Malphite ult meme that has now been created on Twitter because of Tactical. He was doing his
yeah.
best tactical impression.
Yeah, it's tactical Malphite.
Yeah.
Yeah, I completely agree. Yeah,
Alrighty.
no, this team, people had them ranged anywhere from like 3 to 9, and they're looking a lot closer to 9 than anything else.
Yeah. Um. All right, next up we have CLG. This one for me is a bit weird, mainly because I think CLG themselves probably came into the split with the idea that they were going to be a playoff team because of their roster, and then they ran into all this roster problems with them not being able to get Finn. They got Broxo like super late into the season. However, despite them starting off the season so poorly, going 1-10, they end up finishing the split 5-13 and actually look like a pretty solid team. So it's kind of hard to say whether it was a success or if it was a failure. I think from the CLG side, it's a failure just because they probably had higher expectations going to the split. But I think from an outside point of view, I would view it as a success just because of how bad they were and how great they've been looking. Obviously, they lived up to their name of being counter logic because they lost against Golden Guardians after beating Cloud9 and Team Liquid. Yeah, that's sick. Like, nice little moniker you got there. But like, they just like, listen to what I just said. CLG, the fucking dog shit CLG, or former dog shit, I guess, beat Cloud9 and Team Liquid. That's pretty nuts.
And then they lose to Golden Guardians and they lose to EG.
Oh, that
in
was
a game,
banger.
by the way, in a game where EG and CLG were just back and forth trying to give each other the game, like throw after throw after throw. CLG was the last one to throw that game.
Yeah, but I mean, if you compare like CLG's like last 2.5 weeks of performances compared to their lock-in and their start of the season, like it is just like so much better in terms of how they're performing.
Or compare it to their whole last year.
Yeah,
you
sure.
do that.
We could do that.
Yeah,
but
no, I
would categorize as success just based from an outside point of view. While I would think CLG themselves would say failure because I believe they had higher expectations.
I completely agree. It's such a weird thing to call a team with 5 wins a success, especially when you're not a development roster. But I do agree that it's a success because they were in such a weird situation. I think that it's very close to being null, though. Like, even though I go on the side of success, this is not a huge success by any means when you're sitting at 5 wins. But they are looking good. They're taking games off. They're taking multiple games off the top teams. And they actually have a lineup that is showing lots of promise. So definitely a success. There was just one little play that I wanted to call out. So a lot of people were focused on CLG's bot lane, killing Cloud9's bot lane. They got the double kill in lane this past weekend. And I think C9's bot lane was getting a little bit of flame for it because they got killed in lane, but Smoothie made a really nice play. So this is not anything new, but it's still a really nice play when it happens. He was on the Nautilus and he used his minion dematerializer to kill the minion before throwing his hook. And that's what led to the pick. He hooked Sven, and that ultimately led to a double kill with Vulcan trying to save Sven. Now that's just one little thing, but that is something that is not easy to pull off. And it was a really nice play. And I think that snowballed the whole game for them. And I don't think that Smoothie got enough credit for that play. So that was just something that I wanted to call out. I thought that it was a really nice play, and I didn't hear anybody talk about the minion dematerializer. Now, maybe that was just because I was watching a co-stream, and maybe the actual casters called it out, or vice versa. I don't really remember which stream I was watching. But yeah, nice little play by Smoothie.
I'm happy that Smoothie is looking a lot better than his last year on CLG, which was not very good.
Yeah. Yep. God, does CLG ever need something going their way? And it looks like they do have something going their way. And I would say from top down, they're actually looking pretty good. Now, there's sometimes that Pobelter's running it down. That guy's hella inconsistent. He's becoming a new coin flip player. I don't think that's going to stay that way, though. And Turkey's known for that. But overall, the lineup's looking pretty damn good from top to bottom. So I think that this team will be fighting for a playoff spot come summertime, despite the fact that they had such a rough start in spring.
Yep.
We forgot to mention the first blood thing.
Oh.
before we get to the team that we love to talk about. CLG, being the first blood kings that they are, broke the record for the fastest first blood ever. And who else to have it happen to than Jizuke in the game against Evil Geniuses. That to me is one of the funniest things for anybody that missed it. Literally, both teams just ran down middle. Well, I guess Jizuke on one side and then all of CLG on the other. Just ran down middle, immediately hooked him, and he immediately died. And that
Dude,
is the fastest first blood in pro play that there's ever been.
that was sick. Like Smoothie just has the balls to just like flash hook him straight up. Like the exact moment that he saw Jizuke in vision, he just flash hooked. You gotta respect it.
CLG's level ones have been like so creative. Like a lot of people would be like, "How is that creative? They just ran down mid." I don't see anybody else doing that. It is creative. Like it's weird because it's creative and it's not creative. It's definitely creative. It was a really nice play, really weird, and I guess you got a record under your belt, CLG. So pog.
All right, Golden Guardians, you can go first. That sums it up right there.
Hmm.
Oh wait, are you thinking about it? You don't know like whether?
No, I know. I don't know
Okay.
what to say.
Oh,
But like,
okay.
what else is new? We should. They are the 2021's version of CLG. Last year we were just shitting on CLG every week. It seems like we have to do the same for Golden Guardians this week or this year. I will say they picked up a win.
They beat CLG.
Hooray!
Yeah.
They beat CLG.
It's just weird because it, like in just the general like scheme of things, like picking up a win against CLG is not like something that's like that impressive. It's a little more impressive because of CLG's recent form, but like
Yeah.
I don't know, like yeah.
Okay. What do you do? Okay, you're the coach of Golden Guardians. You've got, or you're the GM rather. Let's play GM. You've got $0 in the bank, and your academy team is shitting the bed. Your LCS team is shitting the bed. Your top laner is breaking records for dying. I'm guessing. I don't even know if they're records, but it has to be records.
Or at least like KDA
What
or something.
what do you do, man? I don't know what
Honestly,
you do if you're this team.
I would just straight sub out Niles. I would honestly keep the rest of the team the same. The only move that I would make is to sub out Niles. And like you just mentioned, they got no money in the bank because they can't afford to pay any of their players. But they have what's his name? Tally from Legacy, from the former Legacy team that was at the World Playing Stage at Worlds 2020. They have them on there as the academy top laner. I would sub him in. He's got probably more experience than Niles does.
Yep, and we've kind of talked about this a little bit before on the show. If you sub in Tally, that to me doesn't mean you're giving up on Niles. You're just putting Niles in academy to develop in an area that is made for development. Like I don't know exactly what to think about Tally because I have not seen enough of his games. I haven't watched a lot of academy. I've watched a little bit, but can it get any worse? It
Exactly.
can't,
Like
right?
yeah. The
Like it
thing,
can't.
yeah, it's really weird for Golden Guardians. Like, cause my early on opinion of this team was that everyone on the team was bad, and Iconic was just like running around in the jungle with a bunch of inting laners. But the more and more I really watch Golden Guardians play, it's like Iconic doesn't really do anything. He just sits there, farms camps when enemy junglers are like, making plays around the map, like whether that's showing in other lanes by like diving a lane or ganking a lane, or you get your notification that, oh, enemy team did Drake or enemy team did Herald. It's not even like that Iconic is like doing something else on the other side of the map, or even just like invading the enemy jungler to take away some camps. He just continually farms his own camps and doesn't really make any plays. So I at the start of the season, I had this opinion that Iconic was actually going to be like a pretty decent jungler, but he's kind of just like a farming machine. And I remember
Golden Guardians. Sorry, go ahead.
well, I just even remember like 2 weeks ago, I said that I thought Iconic was the best player on Golden Guardians, and I definitely would. I revoke that statement there, and I would probably agree that I think Stixay has actually been performing pretty well on this team for the most part. I don't think Newbie's played very well either. I'd put him up there with Niles in terms of like him and Niles are the two worst players in LCS, and it's probably really difficult to lane with a player who's performing like Newbie in your lane duo partner, but Stixay and Blaze Olive, I think, have played pretty well. We saw Blaze Olive really carry that game against CLG. Stixay has been pretty solid when ahead, and even like just not inting when behind, which is kind of what you need when you're on one of the worst teams in the league. But it's weird. I would categorize, obviously, this team is a failure just because of their performances and how bad they've been. But the only substitution that I would probably really do is just in top lane.
Yeah,
And maybe like just like a refocus of the team, like get Iconic to be actually like doing things. I don't think Iconic is a bad player whatsoever. I just think that his focus and like just the overall game plan of Golden Guardians needs to be adjusted.
You're when you were talking about Iconic, you gave me thoughts of is it the chicken or the egg? And what I mean by that is like if your jungler isn't able to do much, like isn't able to impact your lane, it's hard for you to get advantages in lane. But if your laners are just getting smacked around, it's harder for your jungler to
Yeah,
do
yeah.
anything. And so it's kind of the chicken or the egg dilemma of like why this team is struggling. But I think it's both, honestly. Like you're in this scenario that one is hurting the other, and it's just a sad little cycle.
Yeah.
It's really unfortunate, but I do agree with you that a Blaze Olive and 6A are looking okay. But that's something I would expect out of veterans. Like I know a Blaze Olive hasn't played in the LCS for a long time, so I guess he's technically a rookie, right? But I mean, he's been around as a pro player in academy for
Yeah.
some time.
I
So
think
to
like
me,
3 years.
he's got that veteran presence, maybe, I guess. And then 6A, of course, same thing. He's been around for quite some time now. So
Yeah.
I don't expect them to struggle nearly as much as you would Iconic, Niles, or Newbie. But regardless, the team as a whole just isn't getting much done. And I think it all comes down to what we've said before, that you can't have too many development pieces on one roster. I don't think it does any good for developing those players. You're
Yeah.
just getting smacked around every week. And yeah, I don't know. It's it's a little bit uh-oh. That's what I would say, and I would say it has been unsuccessful for Golden Guardians. An unsuccessful spring, and I'm anticipating an unsuccessful summer.
Well,
But hey,
enough about the teams. We're almost halfway through all of our new LCS format changes for the year. So what do you think about that? Successful, unsuccessful? Oh, how we feeling?
absolutely successful, I would say.
I would
So a
agree.
few things. So the format change is absolutely successful. The games matter. People actually care about winning every single game. You don't have. I mean, we saw in the LEC, even though it's kind of fun to see, like, haha, we're off rolling because the game doesn't really matter to me. Meh, that novelty wears off pretty damn quick. Especially when you see the team that's off rolling. I think it was Mad Lions against. I don't remember who it was, but
Astralis,
when you
wasn't it?
yes, yeah, especially when you see them just like getting smacked and you're like, oh, it's less fun because the other team's trying. Anyways, yeah, I'm glad we don't have that, if I'm being completely honest. So that part's been extremely successful. I would also say that we have a lot more contenders this year. Teams that I am looking at that could actually have a decent presence at Worlds. Whereas this time last year, I would have said we had one. And well, that team didn't even end up going to Worlds. So I think that just speaks to how bad last year was. So I think there's so much good happening for the LCS. Unfortunately, viewership is very much down, and that's where the bad part comes in, right? So
Yeah.
a lot of good stuff, a lot of bad. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I would definitely call it a success. I can't remember hearing like any complaints about either the lock-in tournament or the new format of the quote unquote spring split being only 6 weeks, but with the 3 games a day format. I think, I've even just seen a lot of Reddit posts on, the main league subreddit saying, should the LEC adopt this similar format? Because, a lot of people really seem to enjoy the 3 days a week of games.
I love it.
Yeah, it's good. There's just a lot
Here's
of
the thing,
LCS
though.
to watch with
We
it.
are heavy consumers of the LCS, though. So I want to play devil's advocate here because maybe that's why we're seeing a drop off. It's people that are like, look, I can't watch League 3 days a week. Like, that's too much for me to keep up with. It's not even worth keeping up with the league altogether. It could
Maybe.
be that reason. Now, mind you, there was still League on Friday, Saturday, Sunday last year. It was just you would still only play 2 games a weekend. So sometimes teams would have a day off, whether it be Friday, Saturday, or Sunday. So it's still sort of the same, but it's still sort of different at the same time. So just playing devil's advocate there, maybe the LEC looks at the LCS and is like, people can't watch that much League of Legends. Maybe we don't want to go that route. I don't know if they would. In my opinion, I think they should make the change, honestly. But that's yeah. I just wanted to play devil's advocate to that.
Yeah, I would also agree with you that we do have a lot more contenders in terms of teams that have, a ceiling that if they reach that ceiling could be a very good team that we send to Worlds. And even just the season overall was a lot more competitive than seasons past
Yep.
In prior seasons, we just see a lot of it's Cloud9, TSM, or Team Liquid. They're like your top 3 teams, and it's not even close. Where, this split, up until like the very end, it was very close in terms of who actually had the chance to finish 1, 2, and 3. It really came down to the last game, where if Cloud9 would have actually lost against Immortals, we would have had a 3-way tie for first place. And even at that, we kind of actually like, I think going into the final day of LCS, like, or even the final weekend of LCS, like, it was probably more likely that we got some tiebreakers than we ended up with no tiebreakers, because there was a ton of crazy, there was a ton of teams that were really tied with, like, for in terms of like wins and close wins. Like, there were 3 teams I think that went into the weekend, or 2 teams tied with 10 wins, 2 teams tied with 9 wins, 1 team had 8 wins, 1 team had 7 wins. Like, it was really, really close, and that's much better to see than seasons past, where you kind of just know what's going to happen throughout the split. It's like, okay,
Yeah.
Cloud9's going to stomp them, or Team Liquid's going to stomp, or TSM's going to stomp, and it's just a matter of who wins the games between Cloud9, TSM, and Team Liquid. Whereas now we have, a lot more interesting matchups, like Dignitas taking 2 games off of TSM. EG took a game off Team Liquid. CLG took a game off Team Liquid. CLG took a game off Cloud9. Cloud9 TSM went 1-1. Like, there was like a ton of back and forth, which is a lot more entertaining and just generally better for the league, I think, than it just being a stomp fest.
And I'm going to try to call on your memory here, because we say this all the time. Your memory's a lot better than mine. But was there a split that was... When was the last split that was close like this? The most recent one that comes to mind was the first one when 100 Thieves joined the league. The first year franchising, there was, I think, 5 or 6 teams that were all around 12-6 or something like that.
That sounds about right.
Was there another one that I'm forgetting?
Huh.
Dude, I can't even remember what summer 20 was like. It's already a blank.
Yeah, and that one, I think, like, Cloud9 and Team Liquid were both 13-3, and Team Liquid had 2-0 over Cloud9 or something like that.
Team Liquid finish 15-3 or something? Didn't they have like an amazing split? And people were like,
yeah, no, that actually sounds more correct. Maybe so. Yeah, they were 50. Yeah, no, but I think that was the last like really close split we had, was that one where like Echo Fox ended up finishing the regular season first place, and 100 Thieves, I think, if I remember correctly, 100 Thieves in the first half of that split went 4-5 and then went 9-0.
Oh, did they really?
Yeah. And I remember Echo Fox, I think, started the split 9-0 or 8-1, and Cloud9 was 7-2, and then Cloud9 had a bit of a drop off, and Echo Fox had a bit of a drop off, and then Team Liquid and 100 Thieves rose up kind of throughout the season, and that was our eventual finals. But yes, I would say it was that season was like the last really close regular season.
Okay. All right. But yeah, anyways, it's been quite a while. The last thing I want to talk about that I think has been a really huge success and might change some stuff is the co-streams, because holy shit, are we seeing a lot of viewership for the co-streams. The LCS seems to be losing viewership on the daily to guys like Doublelift, because I gotta be honest, the Doublelift Meteos co-streams are hilarious. Now, me personally, there are times that I don't want to listen to it because I think they are a little too negative sometimes, but a lot of times they're freaking hilarious, and it's like, it's the stuff you want. Like this weekend when they're telling all the old stories about whatever, that's the stuff that I would love to hear on a regular basis. And so I find myself torn between whether I want to watch the co-stream or the actual stream. I like both, honestly, but it's definitely being rivaled. And we saw Doublelift hit what, like 37K viewers? Yeah. I think that's the highest we've seen so far.
Mm-hmm. For me, it's weird because I think for the most part, I enjoy the co-streams more just due to the fact that for me, I don't really get a ton of value out of the LCS broadcast in terms of like the information that they're talking about and like what's going on with the game. Because when I'm watching League, like when I'm watching the LCS or just any League matches in particular, like I'm heavily paying attention to what's actually going on in the game in terms of like how the jungler's pathing, how the lanes are going, like CS differentials, like what the wave states are like from what I can tell in the minimap and all those things. So I don't necessarily need like a play-by-play or your analyst like they have on the desk or on the broadcast to tell me what's going on, because for myself, I'm watching and taking in everything. But by no way am I knocking the broadcast and saying like what they're saying is insignificant, because it's very relevant, and I think the broadcast does a great job of producing the LCS as a product to all esports fans and all fans who are at like different levels. I think the broadcast is very easy to watch if you're a low-level player and very easy to watch if you're a high-level player. But like you said, the co-streams, they're hilarious. Let's be honest. Like the Doublelift Meteos co-stream, like it kind of seems like it's becoming a consistent thing. Like I think they did their first co-stream like last week or something, and if again they co-streamed together 2 times last week, and I think all 3 days this week. And from what it seems that I saw something on Twitter, they're gonna just continue to co-stream together for the rest of playoffs, which is really really good because I think Doublelift and Meteos are actually a pretty good duo.
Yeah, well, I would even say that I didn't really like the Doublelift co-stream when it was just himself. I like it so much more when it's him and Meteos, or him and someone. It's been Meteos, and that's been great. But I'm a huge fan of
He
Meteos.
did the
So
one with
of course,
Sneaky,
right?
which was good.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and I was actually thinking that this weekend. What if they have Sneaky on that stream as well? If you have Doublelift, Sneaky, and Meteos doing a TriCast co-stream, like, dude, that is gonna be gold. Like, if we think it's good now, just think of how much better it gets.
Epic spring split
Epic.
success.
Yeah, anyways, lots of success. Despite the numbers dropping, that's obviously not so successful. I think the league's been great, and I think there's a lot that Riot should be happy about with their spring split and their new format. Let's get on to the awards, right?
Yes, our spring split awards predictions.
Okay, what are we starting with?
MVP. You good? MVP?
Yeah, let's go. Okay, we have not shared with each other, just so people know, we have not shared with each other what our picks are for any of these, for that matter.
Yes.
Where did you go with the MVP? Because so the talk going into this, most people pretty much have it pinned down to either ALPHARI or BLABER, and that's why we put it in the title, because yeah, I think that's where most people are looking. Now, I've heard some people still mention Core JJ. To me, I can't go that route. I don't think that he was good enough at the start of the split.
Yeah.
What thoughts? Who do you got? Split.
It was close. It was really close
Okay,
in my
keeping
opinion.
everybody in suspense.
But I went with ALPHARI.
Okay.
I'm a big BLABER fan, and I like me some BLABER, and I think he does so much for Cloud9. But I honestly think that ALPHARI does the equivalent for Team Liquid. It feels like in a lot of these Team Liquid games, their early game leads are heavily due to ALPHARI's laning advantages that he gets. He might not be like the flashiest player in terms of like solo killing the enemy laner. I mean, he does solo kill the enemy laner, but not like on a consistent basis. But what you get from ALPHARI is he's going to be up like pretty much 20 to 30 CS, almost it feels like regardless of the lane that he's in, plus a ton of tower plates top lane, and that naturally just draws a lot of pressure, and he does so well in the weak side. That was one of my biggest things about ALPHARI that I think he was going to bring to Team Liquid was he's both an insanely good carry player and an insanely good weak side player. And from what I've just seen out of Team Liquid, he's just straight up carried games for Team Liquid by himself. I think that Cloud9 game, I talked about it a lot that previous week when Cloud9 Team Liquid played and how important those 2 solo kills were in the side lane for ALPHARI. It just seems like a ton of the work that goes on with Team Liquid in terms of in game and getting advantages and what they play through and how they play is just through ALPHARI. And I think if you take ALPHARI off that Team Liquid roster and put any other top laner in the league, they are nowhere near as good as they are right now.
Okay. So I'm a little bit happy here because I went with BLABER. And you and I have this bad habit of picking the same shit when we try not to. I went with BLABER. I think that there's a little bit of recency bias for some people where they're saying that ALPHARI is clear-cut the automatic pick. To me, I don't think it's obvious. I went back and forth on this quite a bit.
Oh, it's very close.
I think that BLABER was so impactful early on in the split. And I would say that ALPHARI, they've kind of swapped,
Yeah, it was like
ALPHARI was still good at the start.
It was like BLABER was up here, ALPHARI was down here, and the ALPHARI's just kind of slowly crept up to BLABER. And it feels like going into this last week, it was kind of like anybody's game, or it was like anybody's to take. And for me, I feel like ALPHARI just he just showed his dominance.
Yeah, for me, I just went with BLABER just because I think he was so good early on in the split, and that's really what it comes down to is they kind of crisscross as to what they're doing, but the amount of impact that this guy is able to have on the game, when BLABER's in the game's about him.
Exactly.
And so often is he getting these massive leads. Now, mind you, as of late, they've thrown a couple of them, but But I am still blown away with how often this guy is able to get bans targeted towards him, and he still finds a new pick to have such a big impact on the game. And so that's why for me, ultimately, I went with Blabber because I think he's the one making plays. Now, that's not to say ALPHARI's not making plays. And I feel a little bit bad for this because it almost feels like I'm taking away from ALPHARI, but I have seen a lot of focus go towards ALPHARI's lane. Now, there's totally that argument that's like, well, they're going to his lane because he's freaking smashing lane. Absolutely. But I also think that you're going to have much more of a chance to stand out if you're getting all this attention, which I think he has also gotten. So it's like I feel bad because it's like I feel like I'm taking away for something that like I shouldn't. But to me, it's just it's so close, and yeah, ultimately I went with Blabber. But the, I'm glad that we have what I would consider two MVPs in the league.
Yeah, to me, there's no clear cut favorite. I would think that this will probably be the closest like margin of like voting in terms of like when we get the results of like how many points each player got. I assume it'll be probably one of the closest it's ever been because I do believe, like I said before with ALPHARI, the same goes for Blabber. If you take Blabber off Cloud9 and put any other jungler on that team, I think the team is significantly worse because, like you said, with Cloud9, the game revolves around Blabber. From the most part, from what we've seen in the meta, we're getting a lot of like Olaf, Udyr, now this sort of tank Hecarim thing. But basically, the way that the jungler functions is, in this current meta is the jungler farms up. You somewhat play around your jungler, like in terms of objective control, but for the most part, the jungler still supports the rest of the team. But on Cloud9, you play through the jungler. Blabber will play a carry whenever possible. We saw him whip out the Rek'Sai. He was like one of the only players in North America to pull out Rek'Sai. He pulled out the AP Gragas. One thing I was surprised about was he never saw his Kindred actually in the regular season. We saw it in the lock-in, but we never saw it from what I remember. I don't think we saw a single Kindred game in the actual spring split. But the game completely revolves around Blabber, and it like you said, it is good to see that I think we have two true MVP candidates, and I despite whoever wins, I think they're equally deserving, but I do think it'll be really close.
I actually think it's going to go to ALPHARI just because of recency bias. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. But yeah, I think it's probably going to go to ALPHARI. I think that's who most people have their eyes on. But yeah, I think you're right in saying that it's going to be really, really close. I will say it was also really, really close last year between Blabber and Niski. I actually had Niski taking it in spring of last year, and ultimately it went to Blabber, but it was freaking close. All right, do you want to get into all pro voting?
Alrighty.
Let's go. We'll just do by lane, right? We'll do like
Yeah,
top
we'll
jungle.
go roll by roll.
Support.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go with that. Who do you got for top lane?
Okay, for top lane, I had first team ALPHARI, kind of obvious. Second team Impact, and third team Huni.
Yep, same. I had the exact same thing.
For me, I think top lane is the most obvious one in terms of the three players that are in it and the ordering of it. Would you agree?
Is there anybody else that you even considered? I don't even.
No,
Let me look at the player list again.
There was not.
I don't think there was anybody else that I even considered.
The only other person that you could, in my opinion, you could consider is Fake God.
Yeah, but again, like I don't think Fake God had nearly as much of an impact.
Nice, good one.
As the other three. So I mean, it's very simple. I don't want to talk too much about ALPHARI. We just talked about him, but Impact is a whole new different player this year, and I would say Huni is. I don't want to say a whole new different player, but a different player than what we've seen. Just to talk about it real quick, Impact is playing a lot more aggressive. He's getting leads in lane, and he is taking over in team fights, whether it's on Aatrox or Renekton. This guy has a lot more weapons than I would have said he had in the past, and so that's why I put him at the number 2 spot. And then Huni is just a lot more patient than I would have given him credit for in the past. I think that his problems in the past were that he was too aggressive and he was overextending at times he shouldn't be. And I specifically remember specifically the game where he was playing Jace and Dinar. That is a very easy lane to get carried away with and play too aggressive, and he did not. And he ended up still winning that lane and being patient when he didn't have his jungler on his side of the map. And so I just think we're seeing a different version of Huni, a new and improved version. Easy for me, ALPHARI, Impact, Huni, 1, 2, 3. They're all looking pretty damn good.
Yeah, I mentioned this last week, but one thing that I really like from Huni this split is just like his ability to play like a bunch of different styles. Like you said, he really likes this Jace into Gnar matchup, And it kind of seems like, especially against TSM, but for the most part now, like we're seeing a lot of people ban out the Jace when we're seeing Gnar get picked up, at the end of phase one draft phases. And I think part of that is due to Huni just really smashing the matchup and showing how good of a counter Jace is into the Gnar. We've said it before, his enchanters have also been really, really good. Some of our favorite TSM drafts are where they put Spica on the Olaf and then they put Huni on the Lulu or the Karma. I think both those two champions in top lane, when you pair them with one of those speedy junglers that kind of just runs down people, like maybe a Hecarim, like an Udyr, like an Olaf, I think is super, super good. And definitely agree. I think this was like an obvious 1, 2, 3. All three top laners have been playing very well this split.
Yeah. Okay, next up, let's go jungle.
All
jungle,
right.
we have BLABER. We just talked about how it's between BLABER and ALPHARI for
Yep.
MVP. It wouldn't make sense if we didn't have BLABER number 1 for jungle.
Yep.
I had Santorin number 2, and I'm afraid to get flamed on this one, but I think it's accurate. I went Xerxes number 3. Mainly because I think this guy has had a very good impact on his games, considering that I don't think he has the best team to play with. I think Xerxes has been, I don't want to say heavily underrated, but underrated nonetheless. I think that he's looked pretty damn good. Now, do you have any counters to that?
Well, I had BLABER 1, Santorin 2, but I actually had Dardoch 3. And mainly just due to the fact that we were talking about Dignitas a little bit earlier, but Aphromoo and Dardoch to me are like the things that make Dignitas like run. Like it feels like whenever Aphromoo or Dardoch aren't playing very well or aren't on, one of their like best champions, it feels like the Dignitas can struggle. And I think Dardoch has done actually a really, really good job this split. One, in terms of his like A to Z jungle challenge and just being able to play a lot of junglers, which is really, really good. Something similar that BLABER was doing. Like we saw BLABER get 5 jungle bans thrown at him, and that's when he whipped out the Rek'Sai for the first time and like completely 1v9'd on it, kind of. Similar to Dardoch, like Dardoch can just play whatever the team needs, which I think is super, super valuable in a team. We're seeing a lot of teams get stuck in this like meta of you're either getting, Olaf is usually banned every game. Udyr is starting to get a little less banned, but it kind of just seems like Udyr and Hecarim are like the kind of champions that you're trading in draft right now. And I do like to see when Dardoch can kind of whip out these other champions like the Nidalee, like the Kayn, like the Skarner, like the J4. Like he can play whatever the team needs, and I do think that's really valuable in terms of, your worth to the team.
So I'll admit, I did think about Dardoch. I had a tough time between Xerxes, Spica, Jose Diodo, and Dardoch. I considered all of them for the last spot. I think a lot of people are going to be upset at us for not going Spica, but I don't think
know,
Spica.
man. To be honest, I would put Spica at like 6th.
Yeah, I don't know.
The only other person that I considered putting 3rd is Jose Diodo. Those are my only 2 considerations were Jose Diodo and Dardoch for 3rd place. I would probably put Xerxes 5, and then I would put Jose Diodo 4, and then I would put Spica 6. I don't think Spica's had a very good season.
To me, I don't think he's been bad though, and that's my issue. Is that I feel like all Dardoch, like those players that I just named, I feel like they're all so close to each other that no matter who I put at the end of it, it doesn't do them justice, because I think they've all had a pretty good impact on their team, and so it's like I feel like I'm doing Spica dirty if I were to put him 6th. But I feel the same way about Jose Diodo. I feel the same way about Xerxes and Dardoch. So it's like this big clump that like I wouldn't be upset if anybody put any of those players in the 3 spot. I'm not as cold on Spica as you are, although I do think that I am a lot colder than most people are on Spica, because I do think that that's where TSM has been struggling, is in the early game, and I think Spica's been a big part of that. But I don't think he's been bad. I really don't. So yeah, it's a little bit weird. But the reason I did want to say, the reason why I didn't go with Dardoch is because a lot of times he's getting these advantages and he's got a huge shutdown on his head, and he's just going too ham and he's trading 1 for 1 but giving away the shutdown.
Yeah, that's kind of true.
That's actually the reason why I didn't go Dardoch, even though I actually think that he's had a pretty good split, much better than we've seen him in the past. He's probably having one of the best splits of his career, if I'm being completely honest. But
the thing with Spica for me is, to me, I definitely agree. I don't think he's been playing bad, but it just feels like he could be doing so much more. It kind of just
Well,
feels
I think
like,
they're gonna have to do more if they want to be a contender at Worlds.
yeah.
I don't think this iteration of
Oh,
TSM is gonna do much more than what we saw last year if they don't start being proactive and making early game plays.
yeah,
Because I
like
think that's
I
something that they
want
struggled with at Worlds last.
I want Spica to get back to summer 2020 Spica where he was super active in the early game, and maybe again
Yeah,
that's sort of due to the meta and the champions at the time where we saw a ton of Nidalee out of Spica, but kind of similar to how I was talking about Iconic, where he kind of just like farms his jungle camps and doesn't really do much. Like, I think part of the reason why TSM is just able to get to late game so easily, maybe not easily, but TSM is able to get to late game pretty consistently, is they've had really great laning and performances out of Sword Art, Power of Evil, and Huni so far this season. And it kind of just feels like as long as Spica is just not dying, then it's a winning success for TSM because those three players that I just named have been so prevalent in the mid and late game for TSM, and they do a lot of the heavy lifting, and Spica is just kind of hitting those 50-50 smites. So I definitely agree with you. While I don't think Spica's been playing poor, I just think he could be doing so much more, and I think I just have a little bit more value towards the junglers like Dardoch, like Xerxes, and like Jose Diodo, who have to, carry a ton of the load for their team and are super active in the early game, making a ton of plays.
yeah. No, I can get behind that argument. Um, Mid lane. I am curious to know what you did with mid because similar to the jungle dilemma that we had there of like who to put three and how there was like four different junglers that I could have put three, I actually think I could have had 4 or 5 different mid laners, maybe
Well,
four,
to be honest,
up to four different mid laners,
to be
and in
honest,
any. Sorry, go ahead.
it sounds like you don't have perks on your top three. That's what it's sounding like to me.
Mm,
Because in my opinion, 1 and 2 are kind of obvious.
okay,
I
go.
had Power Evil 1, and then I had Jensen
Okay.
2,
Uh-huh.
and I had Perks 3. And I'm
Yeah,
just gonna
so
guess right now, you have Jizuke 3.
I do. I do actually.
Nice.
Is that because of what I was talking about earlier with Jizuke, or did you know this
No,
before the episode
no,
even started?
I just got the feeling because you were like, I just got the feeling, just the way you said it right there, and I guess maybe just like because the only other option I considered for 3, instead of Perks is Jizuke, but I ultimately went with Perks mainly just because it's hard to say because it's not that like Perks makes a lot of less mistakes than Jizuke, because I think Perks is making a lot of mistakes in terms of his positioning in the mid game, getting caught out in side lanes quite a lot. But it just feels like Perks isn't like hardcore throwing games like Jizuke is, and that was my main reasoning for
Hold
picking
on,
Perks over Jizuke.
hold on now. Here's the thing for me. So they're both. I think they're both great in lane. In fact, I think they're probably if this list was based off of their laning phase, I think they would be a 1-2 Jizuke.
I would agree with
And
that.
yeah, because I actually don't think that PoE and Jensen have been that great in lane, which is not what we've come to think about them. But I think they've been far more reliable in the late game, and that's why I had PoE and Jensen ahead of them, just because of the impact they've had on the game later on. But
Hmm.
I think that Jizuke will sometimes he'll coin flip the game in the later part of the game, but sometimes he'll win it. And I haven't seen that much out of Perks that he's been getting that huge play that wins them the game in the late game. I've seen him getting caught out a lot of ISO deaths. And I remember last year we harped so much, not just us, everyone was harping on Golden Glue. I think it was last year for his isolated deaths. And now there's no talk about that when it's Perks. And I think we're getting a little bit of what I would call the Bjergsen effect, whereas like when there's a really good player like Bjergsen, but actually having some bad performances, people don't exactly critique them for it. And don't get me wrong, I think Bjergsen's still he's the goat of NA, but there would be times that I thought he would get away with some stuff. And I feel like that's kind of similar with Perks. Now, mind you, I have heard some analysts on like analyst desk and stuff like that call out Perks for some really questionable plays and questionable positioning and whatnot, but not to the extent that I think you would if it wasn't Perks. And so that's why I didn't go with Perks. I have him in the 4 spot, but I could flip flop them. But yeah,
Yeah,
ultimately for me, I still went with Jizuke, but it's close.
the thing that like I can totally get behind your argument and have no problem with that, but the thing is like, would you rather have Perks or Jizuke?
No doubt Perks,
Like
but
that,
we're
like
going based off of
I
their
know,
we're
I
not
know,
going based off yeah, so
I
we're
know,
going
but
based off
like
their performance for spring,
no,
not
even still their performances, I would still take Perks, but I think that I can understand your argument and I get it.
yeah. If you were to say what mid laner would you want to start your team with, even if PoE or Jensen are in the mix, I'm still taking Perks, right? I expect him to get better and to find his own, but he's not he's not playing to what we've known him to play before, you know? So
Yeah.
yeah, I think he'll get there. I just don't think he's there yet, and so I put him in the 4th spot. But yeah, I could have easily put him 3rd, but I think Jizuke is being underrated. I think because he's coin flip, people are really they're really cold on Jizuke for that. But I think if anything, Perks has been just as, because he's getting all these leads, but he's throwing them later. So it's like, what does it really do? The
Yeah.
same argument that I just threw with Dardoch before. He's getting leads, but he's giving away a bunch of shutdowns. It's like Perks is kind of doing the same thing, right?
Mm-hmm. The
But
thing that I
yeah,
will say with Perks is like I feel like he still has such a high ceiling in terms of his
of
performance. Like
course, of course.
he like let's again, everyone
We've
knows this,
seen
but
him
like
pop off way too much in his
yeah,
career to not remember that.
yeah, like
But I'm going based off of what I've seen for spring
no,
so
for
far
sure.
this year, and I don't think he's been a top 3 mid. I think he's been very close, but I don't think I would put him top 3. I put him 4.
All right.
Interesting though. I like that you called it though, so I'll
Yeah.
give you some
Next up we
brownie
got
points.
AD, which was for me the hardest one to decide.
Oh, man, I feel like I'm gonna get flamed for this too.
Really?
Well,
Hmm.
I don't know. I put
You
FBI 1, and I think a lot of people are really cold on 100 Thieves. I am cold on 100 Thieves, but I'm not cold on FBI. I think FBI is still the best AD carry in the league. I went FBI, Zen, and then Neo. And
I
I
had
think I'm going to get flamed for the FBI one. What did you do?
I had the same.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. We mentioned this when we talked about 100 Thieves before, but like all the 100 Thieves players minus FBI saw a dip in their performances, some larger than others. I would say Huhi and Demonte were the two biggest culprits of that. Um, but FBI basically just played at the same level the entire split, and he's been playing at a really high level. The thing where I put FBI ahead of Sven, again, could be a little bit of recency bias, was just Sven dying kind of consistently in the 2v2 over the last couple weeks. I'm not taking anything away from Sven. I still think he's the best late game AD carry in the league. But in terms of just like overall gameplay in this split, I would put FBI 1.
I actually think I have FBI as the best late game AD carry as well, and the best early game.
Interesting.
Yeah, I think FBI is just the best AD carry, I think, all around at the moment. We talk all the time. We love to talk about killer instinct, baby, but it's a thing that you need to have as an AD carry, and you need to know how to manage it. And I think FBI does that better than anyone. And I think his laning phase is better than everyone. So that's why I went with FBI. I think he's in. You know what? He's kind of in the same spot that Cody Sun was last year, whereas like Cody Sun was still a good AD carry, but playing for 100 Thieves, playing with some underperforming players, it really held him back. So it's like, I don't know, maybe it's a 100 Thieves 80 carry curse, but all 3 of these guys are performing well. Neo has been absolute huge, awesome surprise.
Yeah.
Uh, I'm very impressed with his team fighting. Very, very impressed. Uh, and it's he's literally taken the spot that Johnson had last year, whereas we thought Johnson was great team fighting, and he was, honestly. But for some reason, Johnson fell off, and Neo took his spot, and there you go. And I think that you can give some credit to Afromu because he's been such a great playmaker. But yeah, anyways, I don't have much more to say. These 3 are good 80 carries, and yeah, I thought it was pretty easy for the 80 carry slot for me.
Yeah, my only reasoning for saying that it was difficult was because I think it was so close for me between FBI and Sven, and I actually did consider Lost for the third AD carry spot, but ultimately went with Neo because similar to my Dardoch reasoning, and I think this is kind of my reasoning that I'm ended up like using for a lot of these, is Neo does make like a lot more like individual plays. Um, just in his games. We just talked about it.
Yeah.
The killer instinct. Neo has that. We saw that in his Callista game that he had. I forget who they were playing, but he like hella popped off. Whereas Lost, while I think is a super solid AD carry and a very consistent carry in the late game, it does have that similar effect to Spica, like I talked about, where he's just in the lane and he does what is needed to be done, and that's it. Like I do feel like Lost could be doing more. But I ultimately went with Neo because I do value his playmaking more than I think Lost's slightly higher late game consistency.
Yeah, I do think that Lost is a good honorable mention, just because I think that he's kind of gone
He's
under
been
the
pretty
radar.
underrated, I think, this season. Like you said, Xerxes
Yeah,
was very underrated. I would put Lost as really underrated. I think For
Yeah.
me, those 4 AD carries, the FBI, Sven, Neo, and Lost, are the clear-cut top 4. And like I
And there's a
said,
drop off.
I had a very close 1-2 and a very close 3-4.
Yeah. I think pretty much everything you said there is absolutely fair. I can get behind that. Next up, we have support. Now, I almost had Afro number 1, but I ultimately did
Whoa.
not.
So you had him at 2 then.
Yes, I did.
Did you have Core
I went
JJ 3?
Nope, I went Core
You had
JJ 1
Vulcan 3.
actually. Yeah, because I
Oh,
and it's
okay.
not that I think Vulcan's bad, but I do think he has been overrated. I think there's been some games where Vulcan hasn't had the impact on the game that we've seen earlier in the split. How lethal was his Alistair in lock-in and towards the start of the split? He was absolutely insane. Um, I think part of their lane woes is in part due to Vulcan as well as Ven, and so I don't think that Vulcan is a get out of jail free card for some of the woes that they've had in lane. Regardless, I don't know. All 3 of these supports are looking really good. If someone had Vulcan 1, if someone put any of these 3 players in any order, I wouldn't be upset with it. But ultimately, I think Core JJ's looked really good lately. Maybe there's a little bit of recency bias there. I would say Afro's been more consistent throughout the split though, and that's why I almost went with Afro.
Wow.
But ultimately, I went Core just because I feel like his carry, like when he carries a game, it's a heavier carry than what I've seen out of Afro.
Yeah. Um, I definitely agree that I think you could have. I have the same 3, but I think you could have had them in any order. I ended up going with Core JJ 1, Vulcan 2, and Afromu 3.
Okay.
Um, it's weird because now that you mention it, you kind of like potentially convinced me that I should put Afromu number 2 instead of Vulcan.
Has there been a time this split where you're like, Afro, man, you look really bad? Like maybe a play or two,
Maybe
maybe a
like
couple of
one
plays.
game. Maybe like one game, but other than that, yeah.
I
I
would
mean,
say he's looked solid the whole
yeah, no,
split.
no, I would agree
Very
with that.
consistent.
The thing with Vulcan is, I would say that he's a bit flashier in terms of the plays that he's making because he has been playing a lot more of the Rel recently, as opposed to Aframu, who's still kind of on that All-Star duty. And again, maybe that's just like from what I'm seeing. Like I'm just seeing like bigger things out of Vulcan. Like obviously, Aframu's All-Star is really insane, and that's probably his best champion. And he does a lot of things on that champion. It's just like super dynamic in terms of the pressure that they exert in lane and the 2v2 kills that he gets with Neo, and just his multiple like headbutt pulverizes that he gets off in skirmishes and team fights is huge. But again, like I said, I think you've maybe convinced me that I maybe should have had Afro too. It's
I think
close.
one of the issues right now with the bot or with the support champion pool is that like there's 2 supports being played.
Yeah, it's
Of
like
course, there's more than 2, but it's Rel and Alistair like so often.
it's weird because it's like you're either playing Rel or Alistar, but if one of those ends up getting banned, you kind of insert Thresh as the replacement, or you go on a complete tangent and you go the Senatom
Or the other
route.
one's getting banned. If
Yeah,
one's banned, the other gets banned too.
exactly. So it kind of just feels like teams are kind of willing to trade Rel and Alistar depending on their team comps, and then if one of those ends up being banned, insert Thresh, and then like
A little bit of Leona.
the next part of the flowchart is like AIDS. We go Tom Kench Senna.
Ugh. I
God,
don't want to talk about Tom Kench
get
Senna.
all. The only thing that we're gonna say about it is, can they just like remove this from professional play?
I just want Tom Kench out of the game. There, I
I don't
said it.
want either champion in the game. They both
I
are
don't mind
cancer.
Senna that much. I just think she needs a nerf. I think the Tom Kench kit is very much like, hey, this play was about to happen, and now it won't. Pog. Like that's why I don't like Tom Kench. I think you can balance Senna better. She's OP right now, but I think that her kid is not that OP. I just think she needs a little bit of a nerf ski.
Alrighty. Rookie of the split we have up next. What we will mention before we give our pick is the eligible rookies that are in the LCS, and I'll tell you right now, the list ain't
Slim
very good.
pickings.
So we have from FlyQuest, Palafox and Diamond, from Golden Guardians, Niles and Iconic, and from Immortals, Revenge. So there's only 5 players to choose from, and they're all pretty bad.
Who did you go with?
I went with Palafox.
Okay. I don't feel good about going with any of them because I don't think any of them has had a particularly good split. So I don't really have much to say on it. I went Revenge. I like him. I like the guy. He seems like a good guy. He gets
Yeah.
really excited when they win games.
Yeah.
Revenge.
My only reasoning for going Palafox is it just felt like he had the most like all of these rookies were kind of inting in this season. And for me, the one who had like the highest highs was Palafox. I know Revenge had that really epic week 1, but there were some games where Palafox, he actually did and played pretty well. He had 2 really good TF games this weekend. One where he insanely popped off against Dignitas. Ultimately, they didn't win. He had a really good Yone game I mentioned before, a really good Silas game against TSM. I think he had a good Syndra game against some team that I don't remember what it was. But for me, Palafox had like the most pop-offs, and that's why I picked him.
I'm okay with that pick. To me, I'm not gonna lie, I didn't put much thought into it. I'm gonna be completely honest. I didn't, because I don't think any of them are particularly having a good split. I will say it was between Palafox and Revenge. I went with Revenge because I fucking like the guy. I hope that there is no rookie of the split this year. It's a weird little award sometimes.
Yeah. Next up, coaching staff of the split. I believe they've officially now renamed this instead of coach of the split to coaching staff, just to kind of give some more recognition.
This one is always tough, man.
Dude, I have no clue. Straight up.
We don't know.
I want to hear you say first, because I have no clue.
I went back and forth between a few of them. Actually, I went through TSM, I went through Immortals, through Dignitas. I'm going TSM. I think they've had the biggest turnaround. They were looking disastrous at the start of the split. And so I think that the fact that they're looking good right now is why I went with them. But I wouldn't be upset if you went with either of the other 2 teams. For me, who do you got?
Well, I'll just read out what I wrote down. I said Dignitas, maybe Cloud9, maybe TSM. I don't know. I'm going to go with Dignitas.
Yeah, when you have a roster that's not supposed to perform well and they have a good record, like you gotta give a little bit of props to the coach. I will say though, I mentioned last week that I don't think Dignitas is as good as the record, or I don't think they're playing as good as the record right now. I think they're a slightly above 500 team, like a 10-8, or maybe they're a 9-9. I don't know, but
they
I don't
are
think
10-8. So
oh, are they really?
Yes.
I thought they finished 11-7.
No, they went 0-3 this weekend.
Okay,
no, wait,
perfect.
Wait. Maybe they do have 11 wins. Wait, yeah, they beat FlyQuest. They're 11-7.
Okay, well there you go.
Okay, yeah.
I mean, let's be honest. 11-7 is not a huge difference from 10-8.
Yeah, it's not.
But it is at the same time. Like, I don't know. I just don't think that they're. Yeah, I still think that EG is the better team, and I think that they're slightly ahead of Immortals. So I do think they finished a little bit better than they actually are. But still, man, this team was not supposed to be where they are, and they're still picking up wins off of good teams. So yeah, I don't mind it. I can get behind that. Again, this award, a lot of people have said this. It's really difficult to dish out this award because we don't know really what goes on behind the scenes. I don't know. It's an award that's kind of difficult to give away.
Yep.
Okay.
Last
most improved player.
What they should replace Rookie of the Split with, yes, most improved player, because Rookie of the Split, most of the times it feels like you're not like giving it to a player who really deserves it. At least recently, they had the whole fake god thing.
By the way, they might be replacing Rookie of the Split with most improved player. I don't know though. I was listening to Hotline League and they were talking about them almost as if they were the same award.
Oh, okay.
So I don't really know. We're out of date on this stuff, guys. Sorry if we're giving away awards that aren't even awards anymore. But anyways,
I gave it to, if it existed, I'll give it to Fake God.
Okay. He's definitely better. Obviously, he's improved a lot since the last time we saw him. I had a lot of guys that I could give it to. Hooney looks so much better. Impact looks so much better. Neo, Fake God, Saligo. Like, these are all guys that have been in the LCS before and are looking a lot better than when we saw them before. Ultimately, I still went with Neo because I think his ceiling has been so high. Like, on Hotline, they almost sold me. They almost did. They were talking about Saligo and how his stats were so incredibly bad before that, like, it's true, though. His stats are actually, I don't remember what they were, but they were atrocious. That, like, Saligo just playing decent would be, like, a ridiculously big improvement. And so I can definitely see that argument, but for me, I just really love the way Neo's looking. He is hard carrying some fights that look lost and completely turning the game in Dignitas's favor. And I think when you're having that big of an impact, specifically on a game when you've only played like 4 games lifetime in the LCS coming into this year, I think that is a ridiculous improvement. So yeah, I went with Neo.
What I will say just about some of the people that you named, I didn't really, the way that I interpret most improved player, I don't really consider players like Impact or Huni who were once at that high level, who you say could have dropped off
Okay.
and have now reached that level. Same with
But they have improved. But
yes,
I
they
see your
have,
point,
but
though. You make a good point.
and just for Neo specifically, I didn't actually even consider him because, to be honest, when we were doing this beforehand, we were wondering if Neo is actually considered a rookie because while
Yeah.
he has played a few LCS games, I believe the threshold is if you've played 3 or less LCS games, you are still eligible to win Rookie of the Year or Rookie of the Split. However, Neo, who was formerly Asta, played 4 games on Optic, so he's no
Okay.
longer in the running for that. So I didn't really consider Neo because while he can't necessarily win Rookie of the Split and is not classified as a rookie, I still consider him a rookie. So I don't know. This is kind of like his first split, and he's kind of like not that he's improving. I think he's improved from when he started the split, but like it's not like we had anything to base it off beforehand to
Yeah.
judge his improvement from something else like we have from Fake God, where he played like 12 games in the season. He was kind of this is kind of where the meme started, where Fake God won Rookie of the Split, and he was pretty undeserving just because there weren't really any other
Yeah.
candidates.
Yeah. No, I get you. I get you. But yeah.
Yeah,
Anyway, what about our own awards?
yeah,
Our
we got.
classic weekly awards. Popoff Beansoup Awards.
Well, you
Uh,
go first because you got a little weird thing to explain.
do I? Do you even know what it is?
You said this beforehand, yes.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I went off the rift for this one. For Popoff, I gave it to Team Liquid and their social media game this split because not that they've been bad with social media in the past, but I just think their social game got so much better this year and it's really interesting. First of all, Jensen's predicting 3-0s before they happen. he's he's saying that he's not even going to learn much from Perks before Perks even starts off in the league. You got Core JJ who's just he's fire on Twitter. I love Core JJ's Twitter. ALPHARI's good. Like, I don't know. I'm really happy with what Team Liquid has done on the social side of things. Even when it was like if ALPHARI lost to Revenge, they would change their Twitter to like a
Yeah.
dedicated page to Revenge. Like that to me is like some fun stuff. So yeah, I'm really happy with TL. I think they're doing a really good job of making the league more interesting in a time that it's badly needed. So yeah, pop off team social teams, Team Liquid, so their players on their socials popping off, baby.
Okay, do your bean soup because again you're a bit off script on this one.
Oh yeah, my bean soup is not anything that off. Like it's not
Oh,
crazy.
okay.
It's just FlyQuest for this year.
Oh,
We said that FlyQuest could come into the year being anywhere from 3 to 9, and I think right now they are the 9th best team in the league. They're not 9th in the standings. They're like 8th, but I mean, what's big? What
well,
right? Big
yeah.
difference. I think there was so much hype around. Oh, finally, these Cloud9 players are going to get their shot, right? With Palafox or Diamond. And then Johnson was so good last year. We were like, oh, I wonder what Johnson's going to look like on this new team. And a lot of people thought that they could be like, I think it was Emily Rand or Kelsey Moser. Maybe both of them were saying, like, there are ways in which this team finishes third. And they're nowhere fucking near that.
Yeah.
And so that's what they've been really disappointing. Beansoup, FlyQuest, Beansoup. I love the effort. I don't love the result. Been pretty disappointing. FlyQuest has been Beansoup.
Well, I stuck with our weekly theme, but for my pop off, I just gave it to like we just generally had some banger games this weekend, and it was I feel like one of the more entertaining last weeks of LCS we've had in a long time because the standings were so close and there was a lot of potential for tiebreakers. And we had some like super fun and entertaining games where like you kind of said teams were going back and forth. We had that FlyQuest versus Dignitas game. We had that EG versus CLG game. And then we just had like a lot of other games that were just like generally entertaining because of what happened in the game and the result of it. Like we had CLG beating Cloud9. We had the EGTL game where they had that weird lane swap where we saw Jizuke playing Nico top lane against ALPHARI and Impact playing Renekton mid against Ari. Pretty just like cool games to watch the weekend. My bean soup, I gave it to the 100.
Wait. What was your pop off? Your pop off was the weekend in general?
Yeah, just the banger games from the weekend.
Okay. Just checking. Okay, go ahead. Beansoup.
Bean soup, I gave it to the delay in the 100 Thieves versus Immortals game.
Oh.
So I'm gonna be real. I actually fell asleep in my chair watching the game after it had come back on after the 1 hour and a half delay. I fell asleep in my chair like about 15 minutes into the game. And like when the game ended, I woke up and just went to bed at about like 9 p.m., which is one of the earliest, probably the earliest time I've ever gone to bed. Like I took the Team Liquid Dignitas game right after. I put it on my phone, propped it up against my bed, and I just instantly fell asleep. Like
That's a bad sign when the LCS is putting you to
Dude,
sleep.
it just sucks because like that hour and a half break just like completely ruined it for me because
Yeah.
I was so bored in between, the games that were going on. Like I just like didn't feel invested in it anymore. I was just like, can we just get this game over with to go to the next one? And then like I said, like I just fell asleep. Like I just completely went to bed during the Team Liquid Dignitas game.
Yeah. No, I hear you. That was kind of bean soup, honestly. Uh, damn, dude, we got playoffs starting. We haven't even gotten into predictions yet.
Yeah.
Let's get into the series. First one. What time is this one at? This one's on Saturday.
Yeah,
Saturday, 4 o'clock EST, 1 o'clock PST. I'm
I
guessing.
think so. Yes, they're both at.
Double check that, but I'm pretty sure that's what the case is. Okay. I have TL 3-0ing TSM. Is
Whoa!
is that controversial? Okay, it
Yes, it
sounds a little.
is.
Okay, let me explain. So a lot of people are probably going to think like, how can you do that with tactical throwing games and throwing leads? And I am scared of that in this
Jat's gonna hit
prediction.
him with the whip. He's making.
That's not where I'm going with this, but maybe. Where I'm going with this is TL has been very, very good at getting early game leads. TSM has been very bad at getting early game leads. And I think when you have something that is such a strong strength of one team and such a weakness of the other, I feel like that's too much for tactical to throw that. Could be wrong. But yeah, I actually think TL is just a better team, and I think they're going to 3-0. Not because I think TSM's a bad team, but just because of the matchup.
Yeah, honestly, a 3-0 is not super controversial. I was just hyping it up. I have it as a
Oh,
3-1. Yeah,
okay.
I have it as a 3-1 in Team Liquid's favor, but I don't think that Team Liquid is like the straight up better team. Oh, okay, well, they are the straight up better team than TSM. But TL does seem to sort of struggle against TSM because I think, like I did mention before,
10-02.
TSM does do a really, good job and can consistently get to the late game with making minimal mistakes. And I don't know if that's because just due to the inherent AFK playstyle of Spica and Lost, and then just the laning of Huni, Sword Art, and Power of Evil. But on the flip side, you know, Huni's going up against ALPHARI in a 5-game series. I would definitely say ALPHARI, at a minimum, wins 4 out of 5 of those lanes. You have Jensen against Power of Evil. Both players very just, they don't make mistakes very often. And both are kind of on the same page in terms of like scaling up and playing for late game. And then both Core JJ and Sword Art are super playmakers for their teams who are very active in the early game.
Yeah.
But I kind of just see it as Team Liquid is just the better version of TSM. I think Team Liquid has a better late game. Yeah, like I think Team Liquid has a better early game than TSM, a better late game than TSM, a better mid game than TSM, a better team fight than TSM, better laners than TSM. But I don't think TSM is like that extremely far behind, which is why I do think it'll be a bit closer. I'm gonna go 3-1.
TSM 2-0'd them this
Yeah,
year or this split.
Tactical
So
did grief one of those games, I will say.
maybe we're a little crazy. I know, but the thing is, he's been griefing a lot lately. So like, why
Yeah,
not?
but like
I'm
I said,
just playing devil's advocate to my own argument.
Jat's gonna hit him with the whip.
It's like, how many times can tactical continue to get caught out randomly before I lose faith in him and actually say, okay, I fully expect him to do that again? Like,
Yeah.
I still feel for some reason I feel like he won't do that. I don't know. I
All
don't
right,
know.
Sunday's matchup, we got C9, number 1 seed against 100 Thieves, number 4 seed. I think, I'll just throw this out there. I think this will be a much different series than the one in the lock-in tournament.
Yeah.
I got a 3-0 Cloud9.
I also have to go 3-0. 100 Thieves just don't look very good. I don't see where they're going to win. I think that regardless of which mid laner they start, we think it's going to be Ryoma. But regardless of which one, I think Perk is going to shit on them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The only hope I have
BLABER's been
for
much better in the think about the roles like Cloud9. I guess in the bot lane actually.
Yeah, the only hope I have for 100 Thieves is their bot lane. I think the only chance that 100 Thieves really has in this series, well, one, if they can they find a time machine and can go back to their January form, or two is to I don't know, just like get a super favorable bot lane matchup for FBI Huhi, and just like completely stomp lane. Like if 100 Thieves, if they default to something like a Senna Tom Kench or something with like a very AFK-ish support play style, like I don't know, maybe a Thresh or something, or even maybe like I wouldn't even call it like AFK, but like maybe a rel kind of like not that that champion's AFK at all, but like its laning isn't as good as other support champions. Like from 100 Thieves, I want to see them pick Tristana. I want to see them pick Alistar. I want to see them pick Leona. I want to see them pick aggressive bot laners because I think is their only option to really get an advantage. I think
Well,
if they play some shit like Senatom Kench, or they play like scaling with like FPL playing Aphelios or Kai'Sa or something like that, I don't think they have a chance.
I actually think they've had success with the Senatom Kench, if I'm not mistaken. I might be wrong about that. I
It
don't
could
know.
have, if so, it's probably earlier on in the season.
But I still kind of agree with you anyways. Like I see if 100 Thieves is to win games in this series, I see it being through FBI because as we've mentioned, we think he's their best player and well, we think he's the best AD carry right now. So and that's what's in meta also, like aggressive AD carries, Tristana and Kai'Sa. We see a lot of that stuff going in.
Yeah, and I
Going
mean
in all
the only other thing to talk about with this series will be the top lane matchup, but I think we're seeing a much weaker Sunday, and we're seeing an improving Fudge.
I wish we were seeing the better someday because I think it would be a really good test to see how far Fudge has come if
For
he's
sure.
playing
No,
against,
I
like, you know what
agree.
I'm saying?
Yeah,
But I
yeah,
don't think
for
we've
sure.
seen it, and I hope we do see it in this series. I hope we see someday turn it around and look really good and force Fudge to play to his level. I'm not confident that's going to happen, but I hope we do see it. But yeah, anyway,
Yep.
3-0,
All right.
3-0. Not
Yeah.
really fun.
Well, yeah, I had 3-1, 3-0, but
Oh yeah, true, true,
yeah.
true. I hope I'm wrong. I mean, it's so cliche to say. Everyone's like, I want to see 5 games. It's like, well, yeah, duh. But yeah, anyways, hopefully we see 5 games. Anything else, or we want to get into quick news?
We got a quick news.
Speed run. I like to call it speed run, but you don't like
We'll
that.
see.
Go ahead.
Double Lift is back on TSM,
Hey,
but
again,
as
the
a
trash
streamer.
can thing.
But as a streamer. I don't know. I was trying to think of it. Like, I didn't see like any like specific TSM branding in his like co-stream this weekend, but like maybe that's yet to be added. But he's back on TSM as a streamer. I figures that means he'll be somewhat involved in their YouTube content again, or maybe he might make an appearance in TSM Legends or something like that. But
Oh, true. I didn't think about that. I know that he's been doing the YouTube content. Like he's
no,
coming
but I
out
mean
with like
like on
VODs.
TSM's YouTube like channel or whatever.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, I could see that. Yeah. But
Yeah.
you got to figure that his content that's on his YouTube already will also be sponsored by all the stuff that TSM is sponsored by.
Yes. Yes.
What is it, like Grubhub or whatever?
Yes.
Yeah, I don't really know. Cadillac, they got a bunch of them. Geico, the list goes on. Anyways, yeah, pretty cool. I mean, I don't know. To me, it didn't really feel like he wasn't on TSM, even though like he was, like you know what I'm saying? He's
Mm-hmm.
still like talking with Speak all the time. He's dating Lena. Like, tell me Double Lift isn't already on TSM, even whether he gets signed or not. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. All right. Next up, were you about to
Go
say
ahead.
something? Okay.
No, nothing important. Go ahead.
The LEC will apparently be back in their studio for playoffs. Their teams will be in studio. However, recently came out today that apparently Fnatic has some positive COVID-19 tests where Hillisang and one of their coaches on their coaching staff, Tolki, tested positive. So I
This is where I
don't
wish
know.
we had a button. You know, we could press a little sound bite button that goes dun dun dun.
Cool. But honestly, I have no clue what that means for the LEC in terms of them going back into their studio. Maybe this just means that if Fnatic's in a series, Fnatic will play from home and the other team will come into the studio, or if they're just going to abandon this whole thing because of this positive test, we'll have to see.
So, and we may as well mention that the LCS is doing something similar, but in like some theater thing or whatever. Like that's
Yeah,
part of our.
it looks
So,
weird, champ.
and I believe for the LCS one, they're doing like they're going to test everyone before they go in and all that stuff. So I imagine the LEC is doing the same thing with
Yeah,
theirs,
I would
right?
assume it's like some rapid testing or whatever.
Yeah, I don't know what that's going to look like, but I'm sure they'll take care of it. We've gotten used to to COVID by now. I think everyone knows what they're doing with COVID. I've seen the LCS teams do pretty good things as far as keeping their players safe and whatnot. So yeah.
Speaking
Okay,
of
next.
more COVID stuff, last week we had found out that apparently a Team Liquid staff member at their Alienware training facility um, tested positive. Apparently, that was a false positive.
Poggers, no COVID.
Yeah, and basically, Team Liquid just like released a statement saying how, they recognized that one of their staff members tested positive and that they were following all the proper procedures and everything like that. And then they came out with this, I think, on Saturday and basically just said it was a false positive, but we still followed all the procedures. So good job, follow procedure. That's a good thing.
Yeah, hooray.
Next up, another pretty breaking news actually that came out earlier today. Alienware is ending their partnership with LOL Esports due to the I don't have the whole title in front of me, but due to the sexual misconduct allegations against their CEO. Is that correct?
Nicole or something. Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know if he's COO or C. I don't know what he's.
I think it was CEO, I believe.
Oh, there you go. It's someone important. There's some bad allegations. This to me, when I saw this, was just like, oh shit. And I knew we weren't going to get it, but I wanted to hear Travis Gafford's opinion on this because he always has a good opinion or a good idea of what's going on with this kind of stuff. But he's obviously sponsored by Alienware. And so there's just a huge conflict of interest for him to talk on this. So I feel like we're still going to learn a little bit more about it. Maybe we'll wait for more stuff to come out from. I read the article that Jacob Wolf uh, wrote or whatever. It wasn't really anything too telling. The TLDR is in the title, honestly. There wasn't, yeah.
Yeah, well, to my understanding, though, Alienware is a global partner, meaning that they had sponsor involvement in the LCS, the LEC, the LCK, and the LPL. Which
LOL Esports.
Yeah.
As a whole.
Yeah, so they're not going to be sponsored on any of those broadcasts anymore.
Yeah.
So
yeah. I like you got to figure they're losing a big chunk of change with that one.
For sure.
I don't know how much that's going to impact the LCS, if at all. Maybe everything continues on as normal. But the one quick thing I want to say about it was, in like October, there was the interview that Travis did with the commish, Chris Greeley, where he was saying like they fully expect the LCS to be profitable this year.
And they lost their biggest sponsor, probably.
I don't know if like that. Yeah, like you got to figure that some of the money LOL Esports would go to the LCS, seeing as they are promoting the product. So maybe the LCS isn't profitable this year, especially since they didn't do that that exclusivity deal. They didn't do the Twitch or YouTube either. So a lot of stuff. I feel like Chris Greeley probably wishes he didn't say that and wishes he could have a take back. But that's my small little piece on that. What's next?
I think that's it. Am I forgetting something?
Everything. I don't got anything else on my list. We had quite the long episode.
I thought it was going to be a short episode, but I feel like every time we say that, it ends up being as long as the other ones.
Yeah, true. Big shout out to everyone that showed up in the live chat. We weren't sure if we were going to have anyone for that matter, considering we're doing it so late and considering that it is a new time that people aren't used to. But thank you so much for everyone that showed up in the live chat. Huge shout out to you guys.
Thank you.
And I want to tease this. I don't want to give too much information because, well, straight up, we don't know the information. But we are going to try to plan a prop sheet that we see a lot of you guys come, a lot of regulars that are in the chat and stuff like that, and we see you guys or in the comment section, and I don't know, we want to get to do some fun stuff with you guys. So we're going to do a prop sheet for the LCS finals. We think we're going to do it on stream. We're going to probably do it on a Thursday. We don't know if that's for sure yet, but basically the reason I'm telling you guys this is because we need you guys to go over to our Twitch channel and follow, because you'll get a notification for when we go live. We will give you guys more information on this as time goes on, and we will fill you in on what's going on with it. But what you need to know for now is it will be free to enter, and we will look to give you guys a prize for the winner, and it'll just be some fun props for the LCS final. Who, let's say hypothetically, it was Cloud9 TSM. It'll be like who wins and in how many games and who is the kill leader, stuff like that. And I think it'll be a lot of fun to do some little things like that and give away some cool prizes. We will let you guys know what we know when we make it up, what the prizes are and all that crap. But yeah, go follow us on Twitch, guys. It's Clown Fiesta Podcast, and we want your guys' input on the bet sheet. That's why we're doing it live, by the way. It's that if there's anything you guys want to add to the sheet, the prop sheet, well, start thinking of some fun stuff. Anything is open for consideration, let's say. So that'll be something that we'll do, and that should be fun. We'll do that in a couple of weeks, right before the LCS finals. Anything else, JNT, that you want to shout out or plug or whatever?
Nope.
Just sub. Guys, we need some subs. Actually, our sub number's been going up pretty good. Thanks a lot to you guys. I'm dragging this on for way too long. Thank you
Yep.
guys so much for your guys' support. You guys have been fantastic, and we hope to see you guys next week. This has been episode 33 of the Clown Fiesta podcast.